And get started. This is the regular meeting of the Littleton City Council, Tuesday, May 7th. Roll call, please.
Mayor Brinkman?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Stallman?
Here.
Councilmember Beckman?
Here.
Councilmember Cernanik?
Present.
Councilmember Cole? Here. Councilmember Taylor?
Present.
Councilmember Valdez?
Present.
Okay, we will be led in the pledge by CJ from Troop 63.
It's not.
Okay, before we begin our meeting, I want to ask for a moment of silence. We lost a police officer yesterday, a 10-year veteran of our police department, and his name is Kevin Denner. He was killed in a off-duty motorcycle accident. He survived by his wife, Kristen, and his children, Caitlin and Caden. Services will be at Mission Hills Church in Littleton off of County Line Road, and they'll be held this Friday at 10 a.m. If you all will just hold a moment of silence for Kevin and his family. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Approval of the agenda. Any changes to the agenda this evening? Seeing none, it's approved. The minutes from the regular meeting of April 16th. Any changes?
I do.
Jim?
On line 225, you need to show me as being present rather than absent. I was voting on everything else, so I was just about to vote for that one, too.
I'll fix it.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, approved as amended. The minutes from the study session of April 22nd. Any changes? Seeing none, that's approved as amended. Comments and report, City Manager?
None this evening, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Cole? Here comes the rain.
Welcome to spring.
In case you didn't hear it.
I'm sorry.
Peggy?
Two things. Sorry, I was asking, would the city clerk be changing the vote to 7-0 from 6-0 when she changed?
She will.
I will.
Yeah, thank you.
It'll change it automatically, but I'll fix it.
Okay, thank you. I did have, so hold a second here. I have two things. Well, not to take up everybody's time, but I have to share really nice experience I had. Two of them briefly I had. I had the pleasure and honor of speaking to a citizenship class that's part of the LI3 program a couple weeks ago. Just incredible, excited, dedicated people of all ages in that class, and they already knew an awful lot about the city, but I got to speak to them about what City Council does. Then last Friday, I had the pleasure of helping with other volunteers, some from the Rotary and some from Girl Scouts. We helped the city staff and South Suburban Parks and Recreation plant, I think, 40 to 50 trees in James Taylor Park and the Harlow Park. We would have had more volunteers, but the planting got postponed twice because of snow, and then a third time also because of the snow. So, but you can go out there and you'll be able to tell the trees we've planted because they have the newer mulch around them. But it's just a joy to do these things with other volunteers from the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Taylor.
Yes, I attended along with some other council people CDOT's luncheon that was held in Aurora recently, they talked about ramp funding and how they're going to put money into the assets they already own to make sure they're not continuing to deteriorate. Last evening, the council met with the city's planning board, and even though Scott Ranville brought this up, I wasn't fast enough to catch on to it at the meeting last night. But I do think that it's important that we have something in our UCOM plan that does talk about affordable housing, workforce housing, housing for seniors, that type of thing. So that I would hope the planning board would pick up and work on those areas as well as part of the thing. It was mentioned last night, but none of us were quite sharp enough to pick up that that was maybe a part of what was missing out of that conversation. Dr. Cogg had several meetings with Dr. Cogg, the Advisory Committee on Aging, dealt with funding for senior services. They have a lot more requests than what we have money to fund. So the money gets spread across many, many agencies as best we can. In the Board of Directors meeting, we had our poorest attendance I can ever remember having. It takes 29 votes for us to do certain things. There are 56 members of the board, and we only had 28 members there. So there were certain things that we could not take action on and have to wait until this month's meeting, which is on the 15th, in order to do that. But we did discuss legislation. We talked about the funding process for selected projects and transit demand management pool funds. We had a report on the CDOT's ramp funding and the memorandum of understanding we currently have with CDOT that is expiring and what we may do in the future with that. The Metro Vision Issues Committee modified the policy for the Transportation Improvement Plan funding. This is primarily for urban centers studies and had a very lengthy discussion on modeling scenarios for the Metro Vision 2040 plan. Attended along with Peggy and Mike Bratton the last energy efficiency workshop. Had as speakers there Governor Ritter, Tom Clark, Howard Geller, and several other people. It was a 5-hour session, something like that. It was very informative, but it was the end of the energy efficiency workshops for the year. And that's it.
Bruce.
Thank you. I attended the Littleton Public School Board meeting on the 25th of April. Principal topics included the science, visual arts, music, PE curriculum standards, and a group health insurance update. I won't go into any details. If you're interested in any or all of those topics, the LPS website will have extensive information. I also attended this evening, just before coming over here, the first annual LPS Special Services Advisory Committee and Special Ed Department Curo Awards. And these are awards. Curo is a Latin word which means to care for or to pay attention to, and it's a fitting word to use to honor individuals who make a difference in the lives of children with disabilities. So the folks who won these awards, I'll just list them off very quickly. A fellow named Ethan Chapman, Andrew Eichmann, Dawn Gilpin, Ashley Melke, Sheila Pepe, and Jenny Schoen, and David Wilson. I don't know all of them, but I do know Andy Eichmann, who is the coach of the Littleton Unified Basketball Team. And if you ever want to get fired up about life in general, go to a Unified basketball game sometime at one of the high schools in the winter. It's just a wonderful, wonderful event, and everybody walks out feeling better about themselves. Lastly, the Epic Spring Cleaning event was held last Saturday, and it was a rousing success. We collected all in between the two sites, one in Littleton, one in Englewood, 10,260 pounds, which resulted in some food donations to interfaith community charities, as well as a cash contribution of $1,885 from Arc Thrift to Interfaith. So kudos to both communities, Littleton and Englewood, although between Yumi and the Lamppost, the Littleton site dominated. So thank you.
Thank you. Jerry?
first of all, how do y'all like the mood lighting that we have in here? It's kind of interesting, isn't it? A few things here. And I was hoping you were going to mention this, Bruce. For the Bachelor Scholars, we had 3 of them at the Littleton Public Schools. We had from Rappel High School, John Brock, Heritage High School, Samuel Payne, and Littleton High School in District 2, Ryan Dineen, I believe it's pronounced. I'm sorry, Ryan, if I pronounced that wrong. But congratulations to the Bachelor Scholarship Award winners. Also, I saw an article in the paper, Mr. Penny, maybe you can help me out here, where it talked about their black and white cars and how they were going back to the future. But we've had black and white now for a few years, have we not?
Yep.
Yeah, so they made a big deal out of theirs.
We have.
Yeah, okay. I saw that and I thought, well, gee whiz, we've been doing that for a while now.
Our guys designed them and they won an award for it. Is that right, Bruce?
Yeah, it didn't just say anything about that. But hey, also this for Mr. Penny again, if you will. The parking during games and events that are held at the Littleton Public School Stadium and also over at Progress Park can be a mess and somewhat dangerous at times. I think visitors from outside the area who are unfamiliar with where to park will sometimes park in front of other people's driveways or other no parking zones. So if possible, I was wondering if maybe we could get with the managers of those, of Littleton Stadium and Progress Park and make sure that the organizations running whatever event is taking place, make sure that they have adequate staff for people, to help people with their parking so that they can stay out of our neighborhoods and blocking up driveways and stuff, if you could look into that.
I will certainly follow up on that.
I do
yes.
appreciate that.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. It does affect a few people, and it's kind of a drag for them. My last item is the City of Littleton has a large group of small businesses dealing with a variety of industries, including engineering, designing, pottery, teddy bears, blankets, beer brewing. And with that in mind, I attended a meeting of international businesses a couple weeks ago. The subject was how to bring your product and services to the global marketplace. Well, one of the points that I took away from that meeting was it's not what you know, it's often who you know. For example, if you are traveling to a foreign country and you are an entrepreneur and you have a product that may be of interest in that foreign market, you might want to contact the Littleton Development Economic Group, Denise Stevens, and she may be able to help you to get in contact with maybe some local representatives or state representatives or even federal representatives from the Economic Business Development Office, and ask one of those folks, are there any local representatives here in Colorado from the country that you may be visiting? And if the answer is yes, call the representative and arrange a meeting so you can find out a local person in the country that you're visiting, so perhaps you can drum up some business there. By taking that initiative to contact the right people, you may be able to open the door to some new markets for you. And not only would that be great for you, of course, it would be fantastic for the City of Littleton. And I think one last piece on that business portion, and this is for council, I would like us all to really start thinking about the BAC committee that we had at one time, and maybe is there a time that maybe we should restart that committee. That is all.
Thank you. Phil?
Thank you. The Economic Development Group of the South Metro Denver Chamber of Commerce is having their monthly meeting this Friday. It's a breakfast meeting. The agenda is going to include a presentation from the head of CM2H Hill, as well as a summary of the business retention and expansion interviews and an update on that. And then the Q1 commercial real estate update will be presented. I sent the report to the city manager, so if he could forward it to appropriate staff and council, that would be wonderful. So you can nudge him and remind him of that. And then this Thursday, I'm going to a luncheon, a roundtable discussion with Scott Murphy, the superintendent for LPS. It's co-sponsored with the South Metro Denver Chamber, and it's on 21st century education. But also at that time, and I didn't know if anyone would have an interest in attending, the Lone Tree State of the City is at 11:30 a.m. at the Lone Tree Arts Center on Thursday. Wanted to extend my appreciation to for the letter on phosphorus and nitrogen that the city manager sent out, basically saying nothing at this point in time needs to be done to comply with Regulation 85. And Kathy, my wife, and I had the opportunity to serve on an interview panel for Colorado United Scholarship for those folks that are going to be graduating, seniors that are moving on. Some of the areas of evaluation included not just academics, but also athletics, service into the community, and then, of course, poise during the interviews. So they had a chance to experience some of the interrogatories that I was able to put in front of them. But Ryan Greenway, who lives in District 4, as well as Brian and Brittany, all received scholarship awards. And then wanted to share with those folks that may or may not have attended the ACC Foundation luncheon last week. Award of Education Impact was given to a Mr. Jason Pollock, and you can go through a lot of it, but he's involved in documentaries and using social media in conjunction with that. But one of the things I found particularly impactful is his current project. For those that do have internet access, go out and check out undroppable.com. And it's a story told in their own words of high school students that are going on to college that have overcome challenges in their lives to actually be in a position so that they're very committed to head off to college. And again, that's undroppable.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce?
I don't have much to add. It sounds like anything I had was covered. But on the undroppable, I would mention that the Metro mayors and commissioners have for many years interviewed and honored kids that have just overcome tremendous obstacles in order to be able to progress to the point where they graduate from high school and they move on to college. And I found so many similarities in the undroppable information that was alluded to what the Metro mayors have experienced and the wonderful kids that they've interviewed over the years. So there is a demonstrated need for attention to those issues here, right here in River City. And so take the time and look at that undroppable, and then know that there's been quite an effort here to try to deal with some of those issues. The other that I want to add is it's time for potholes. And one of the features has been around, but one of the features of the new website is the ability to report potholes. And, this is one of those things where if there's one at the end of your street, report it before it breaks an axle or loses a small child or whatever, because those grow very quickly, and the city will take care of those. And that is part of keeping our infrastructure going, so appreciate your help there.
Thank you. Okay, citizen appearances. We have no guest citizens this evening. We do have two scheduled public presentations. The first one is the Human Life Project, and that'll be presented by Scott Ranville.
All right, well, Mayor, Council, staff, thank you for letting me come speak tonight. Hopefully get these slides up here real quick. But I'm Scott Ranville. You know my wife, Jenny. As you said, our company is Human Life Project, HLP. So we are hopefully going to have something fun to talk about here real quickly. Sorry. That's all right.
Keep talking, Scott. We don't want to lose the crowd, man.
Okay, so I got it memorized anyways. But all right, so we are going to present, we're starting next school year, the 2013-14 school year, a architectural design competition for high school and grade school students. We have two main objectives with this. The first one is obviously the students. Try to create a really good competition for them. An education opportunity. We've talked to some principals and teachers, and they're excited about how the architecture design can influence the social side of things. So they're pretty excited about that educational opportunity for the students. And then we're going to have two categories. The first one, the scholarship category, is named because we're raising money for college scholarships for the kids. The quantity, hold on one second. So the college scholarship, it will depend on how much money we can raise with our various fundraising that we do.
Right. When you talk about we and raising money for the scholarships, Scott, maybe you can tell us who the we is.
Me and Jenny.
Good.
Jenny and I.
Jenny and I, sure. All right, thank you. All right. So then our second category, as we call them the fun category, this is mostly for the younger kids when we're trying to get some prizes for that. And then, so that's the first half, and that's where most of the competitions will stop. We want to take it one more step, and we want to take this information and feed it back to cities as well as businesses like development companies, construction companies. For the cities, we're hoping that it'll be a graphical way to look at these ideas from the students, and then you can evaluate whether or not it's good for the city. If it's good for the city, then there might be future steps like looking at zoning or anything else, but primarily just as an educational opportunity to see if it will be a match for the city. So the research I've done for the Denver metro area, as Jim was kind of introducing earlier, for the metro area as a whole, there's a shortage of senior housing, affordable, the quantity of senior housing. And to a lesser degree, we've also found a need for more affordable or workforce-priced housing for families that are close to jobs. And then for Littleton specifically, we found this to be even more so the case. For example, Brett, I believe his name, is a CEO at Littleton Adventist Hospital. He gave a presentation at the Littleton Business Coalition a few weeks back, and he lists the strengths and weaknesses of Littleton. And I believe it was the very first bullet point for a weakness was affordable housing, as he's trying to attract new employees to the hospital. And then basically every real estate agent locally that I've talked to, as well as one development company, they've all said that senior housing is a significant issue in Littleton, and to a lesser degree, affordable housing for families is also an issue. So to address that, we want to introduce, or for this competition for this year, which we hope will become an annual event, is Pocket Neighborhoods. So we're hoping Pocket Neighborhoods will address these issues. So if I backtrack just a little bit, in a typical suburban neighborhood, a 1-acre site will have approximately 4 houses in most suburbs, around the metro as well as the Denver, as well as Littleton specifically. Typically, you're going to have fences between everyone's house. So even if your backyard neighbor is 3/4 of an inch away from you from the thickness of the fence, you're more likely not going to talk to them too much. So with the pocket neighborhoods, again, we're going to try to overcome some of that and introduce more community aspect to the housing. So for our competition, we're going to use that 1-acre site. We're going to have a requirement of 2 senior houses, so no steps and all the living on the first floor. There'll be another requirement for 2 family-friendly houses on the site. So family-friendly, by our definition, is 3 or more bedrooms. And then, as a whole, the site has to have a minimum of 6 houses, and we're going to encourage more that will fit appropriately and feel very comfortable. So that's our program for the pocket neighborhoods, and our research has indicated that this will be a more community feel to it, more of a small town, real good feel to it. And the way that this happens is that those fences are going to go away, and that instead of every house having an individual yard, there'll be a shared yard or a courtyard for all the houses. So that's how they get more houses on the same acreage, but have it feel very small and hometown and feel very good with it. And our research is also indicating that this can be more affordable and even significantly more affordable than current housing prices. This one blog article that I read, they did a very extensive research with some college students and real estate agents and everything, and they're pricing the houses at about $100,000 for 2 to 3 bedrooms, depending on, there's a couple different styles that they had working with, about 1,200 square feet. So if that pricing model held in Littleton, it would dramatically reduce the pricing here for housing. So these are examples of existing pocket neighborhoods that I got from the webpage listed there, Ross Chapin. And he might actually give us some prizes for our competition, so I talked to him this week. So these are pictures of projects that he's worked on. And as you look at it, I mean, other than being more green than we can get in Denver here with our drought, but other than the green, it's very Littleton-like. Those houses, I could see those houses in Littleton. And this is a second neighborhood that he has created. And again, those houses are very I think Littleton scale, I think they could fit in very well in our city here. So then, Jenny has taught classes to K to 12 students for Introduction to Architecture and Urban Planning. So these are some of the outputs from her class. And the reason I'm showing these is just to show you that the students in and around the area here, they have some really good ideas, and they can articulate it with, in this case, SketchUp. So I think that the output from this competition is going to be very interesting to look at. So this example is from 2 years ago, the class. The student created multifamily housing. The bottom floor is for seniors, so no steps. And then the families are on levels 2 and 3 since they can take the steps. And this student used a courtyard configuration to try to encourage that community interaction. This is a museum that one of the students created, and there's actually a fort or playhouse in the middle of it. You can kind of see it through the glass there. This year's topic was designing the ideal family-friendly city. So this is one of the students' ideas. If you zoom in, this is what their city core or center core looked like with a park at the center of the town. Another student's kind of high-level view, and if you zoom in, again, they had a lot of green space at their urban core for the people to gather. And one of the interesting things about this one is that the dark gray lines there, those are the car roads. The light gray are the pedestrian pathways, so walking, biking, and they had a very clear concept of separating the two for safety for everyone. And then another of the objectives of this year's class was to make the city self-sufficient for food. So the green on the outside of this urban core is the farmland and grazing land for all the food that would need, or the space that would needed for the food for 50,000 residents in the city. So just kind of show you those proportions. And then this student, if you zoom into their core, they reused their museum from 2 years ago, so we just thought it was kind of fun. So I'm here today to ask for an official endorsement from the city, no cost. So hopefully that would allow us then to use the city name and icon on our marketing materials. We'd like to ask one council member to be a judge. And actually, I think I forgot to mention, that the competition is going to be up next February, so 2014, on a Saturday, we're thinking, depending on where we can get scheduled for the event. So if anyone wants to volunteer today, I definitely take it as a tentative until we get closer to the event and you can figure out your schedules. And then lastly, we'd like to request to come back a year from now to present to you the results of the competition. So that is it. Any comments or questions?
And, Madam Chairman, could we move this to general business?
Yeah. Thanks, Scott. We're going to go ahead and we'll move this to general business and then discuss it at that point.
Okay. Do I need to stand around, or you want me to? Or?
If you want to.
Okay. I just want to any questions for me at that point? Or?
I don't think we'll have any questions.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Okay, the next scheduled public presentation is John Watson with a proposed Littleton building moratorium.
Good evening, council, staff, citizens. Thank you for coming. Tonight, we want to present, on behalf of several citizens, a residential rezoning moratorium. I captioned it originally a building moratorium, but it's led to confusion. But it's a rezoning moratorium. And if you've had a chance to read it, it was drafted by Jack Randall and myself. It applies solely to rezoning of residential, multifamily, apartment units in the city of Littleton. It would apply for a limited period of time through January of 2014. Now, I've started with this picture because Val told me to. This is a picture of our entry onto Mineral. It's going to be significant later on, but this is our Mineral 500 when we try to enter onto Mineral in present situation. And we have to go 3 minutes waiting for the stoplight to stop traffic on the oncoming from the east side, and then go to the middle of the intersection and then 3 minutes to the other side. We're not even asking for a change to that. That's old history. But we're going to be talking about some other issues that we want to include. The city has now approved 2 multifamily high-density units in the year 2014 already. We have several on the books. We have some applied for already. Several rezonings. And what we haven't done is we haven't provided for impact fees. We've talked about those. We don't have a date certain for impact fees at this point in time. We've seen the studies. We paid for the consultant's fee of $6,250 last year, and you had a consultant tell you in December that we needed to have impact fees of $9,000 or $10,000. Those haven't been done yet. We understand the nexus requirement for impact fees, but those have existed since time immemorial. We haven't had a confirmation of utility availability on the rezoning requests when we look at them at the planning office. We have seriously considered concerns about traffic and parking. You've seen my picture of Mineral Boulevard for one that you're going to consider later on. And now we've already had the impact on traffic at Nevada Place. And we're going to have more traffic considerations on County Line Road for Littleton Commons. None of those have been considered at this point in time. We passed 2 projects without considering those issues at this point in time. The one coming up next is going to be Broadstone. Those traffic issues are going to be the same as the ones we've just talked about, already passed, and the ones that are going to be coming online in the future. Now, Littleton has a limited number of infill spaces that we can deal with. We've already taken one and converted it from retail to multifamily residential. We've got more coming online because the developers have seen the city doesn't have impact fees, it doesn't have an economic plan, doesn't have a comp plan, doesn't have a retail leakage plan at this point in time, has limited retail options for zoning. We don't have an RMU zoning plan. So we're going to get more and more of these as time progresses. We already have existing apartment units we're going to talk about tonight, and we think those units have substantial vacancies already. Now, we'll be told that the units are 100% occupied, but we've also counted dark units, an absence of furniture, people waving the now leasing signs on the weekends in front of the apartment complexes. The websites show that they have all units available on their websites. So somebody should be telling those tenants to turn on their lights and buy furniture if they're occupied. We also have the issue, if we put more apartments in these areas that are the limited infill areas, of property values. In some cases, people are going to be losing their houses, it looks like. In any event, the zoning that we created originally was for retail on many of these sites. That retail zoning had a purpose and a plan. It was to provide for a consolidated base. And if you look at your economic plan that you're going to talk about later, which has appeared on the consent calendar for tonight, it takes several segments to create a viable economic plan for the city. You've got to have retail, you've got to have residential, and you've got to have commercial. We understand that. So we can't convert every available remaining parcel to multifamily residential and expect to have a viable city. You're going to lose your sales tax base. And we certainly can't do it if we don't have impact fees. We're going to have some people that want to talk about that as well. We clearly think before we consider any new rezonings, we've got to implement the economic plan. We should have a TOD plan, especially for the Broadstone project area. And we certainly need the retail or economic development plan. The comp plan, as we said, has never been approved. We think we also need some zoning options, such as an RMU zoning. A residential mixed use would seem to make sense for the city of Littleton. Since we're dealing with finite areas of infill property, we know we've got to have a mix of residential and retail. We ought to have a zoning that allows for that. We've got a lot of inventory in Littleton. We've got a lot of vacancies in the city of Littleton on existing inventory. That's Pinnacle at Mountain Gate, Alta Aspen Grove. We've got the Alexan at the bottom. And Linda Kay has already presented what's going on at Alexan. We've got the Broadstone project coming before you. We've already approved Nevada Place. We've already approved the County Line Road property called Littleton Commons. We have some South Metro housing properties coming online, we're told. You've got the Marathon and Insert properties with residential multifamily to consider sometime in the future. We've got quite an inventory of properties either online or coming online that we have to consider whether we're going to be approving more residential multifamily high-density projects. So at this point in time, what we've done as a city is we've not acted. We haven't done the nexus study. We've seen that we need to have an impact fee. We've already had the study. We've already paid the consultant. It's been in here since December, and we still don't have an impact fee. We need an ordinance to be presented so that can happen. In none of these projects, either the ones that are already approved on the drawing boards or before the Planning Commission, do we have a provision for escrows or impact fees. But the two approved developments, we've already missed those opportunities unless we pass an impact fee ordinance that applies before the building permit issues. That's the last chance you're going to get to make economic sense out of the two projects already passed. We've had some dates set for resolution of some of these issues, and we don't feel that they've been met. We still don't have the economic plan, the TOD plan, the comp plan, and those rezoning options that we've been talking about. The citizens are here tonight because they're concerned way beyond those issues, and that's their neighborhood issues that are going to be affected by these multifamily high-density residential projects. Property values are affected. We can look at studies, we can talk about anecdotes or demographics, but property values are going to be adversely impacted if you have a high-density multifamily go up next to you. And somebody can come up here and tell you that high density reduces traffic, and if they want to believe that, then I want to talk to them about my Ocean View property in Littleton they can buy, because that doesn't happen. We've got traffic considerations. I know that no arrangements were made for County Line on the Commons project. We're going to have widening, signalization, sidewalks, curb spans, gutters. All those issues are going to come. So the guy coming behind me is going to be able to tell you in 2 years they need those things because we failed to provide for them up front. It's nowhere. No impact fees, no plan, no escrows, no payments. It goes on with the traffic lights and signalization in all of these areas. You have to think about those before you approve projects. Accel and decel lanes exiting and entering neighborhoods. They're not there. We're going to end up paying for them. Reminds me of my daughter when she was growing up, when Nicole was using her allowance. I'd tell her she had to use her allowance to buy something. She'd say, well, I'm going to use the orange money instead of my green money. She liked playing Monopoly. Well, we're going to use our orange money to pay for this stuff because we didn't approve them. We don't want to pay the green money that somebody should have paid up front for these projects. It's going to fall on the taxpayers if we don't think about those in advance. We need the impact fees, the escrows taken care of before building permits are issued, even on the existing projects. So that's why we're here. No matter what somebody tells the press, this is a rezoning moratorium proposal for the rest of the year. It relates only to multifamily, relates only to high density, and on properties which have to be rezoned. We've prepared an ordinance. We're submitting it. We want it voted on tonight. We want it on the consent calendar. We want it to continue on if we have to, if these issues aren't resolved. And we think the developers are also entitled to a disclosure of what's going to happen in the city. We can't have it continue where projects keep coming online and we don't know what's going to happen as citizens, developers don't know what's going to happen, and everything's on hold. Crucial decisions need to be made. So this is our ordinance. We've given it to you in advance so you can study it. It's available to anybody that wants to look at it. And it relates only to what I've talked about. So it's not a moratorium on all building in Littleton. Matter of fact, the people that are most pro-growth are probably the people sitting here tonight. And what I mean by that is they applaud the city for such things as Breckenridge Brewery, for Alamo Draft House, the most successful draft house in the country for Alamo. Those are great ideas. They work well for the city. What doesn't work is taking our last few retail infill parcels and turn them into multifamily that we frankly don't think we want and we certainly don't think we need. And if they're going to come, if you're going to put some mixed-use zoning, for example, that might make sense, then we've got to think about impact fees for residential units because they're not going to pay their way. That's just how it works. Now, I've done many development deals. I've always found that the first deal is the worst deal. And you just can't take the first deal that shows up in town. It's not going to work. So that's why these citizens are here tonight. They're asking for a vote. They want it on the consent calendar for this ordinance be placed on the consent calendar tonight. They want to know where you stand. That's what we have, and that's what we thank you for your time.
Thank you. This is the time for unscheduled public appearances. If anybody would like to come down and address council, they may do so. Citizens are invited to express opinion and ask questions regarding city services, council policies, or other matters of community concern. They're not part of the scheduled agenda. We do not have a public hearing this evening, so any topic is fairly open. Generally, an immediate response should not be expected. Typically, issues are referred to the city staff for follow-up information or research and reported back to council. The time limited on unscheduled is to 4 minutes, and so I'll light this light, and when it turns red, you've hit your 4 minutes. Dave. Hi. Hello.
Dave Mitchell, 1000 West Ridge Road. I understand there's approximately 2,000 units being considered various stages of building permit being discussed. If you took the consultant's study and you multiplied that times 2,000 units, you're talking about $20 million. That's what, about half of the annual budget for the city? It's a lot of money. And so we would like for everybody to take a step back, take a deep breath, and take a hard look at what the city needs to do. But I'm here to talk mostly about zoning, and we asked what is zoning, and I came up with 4 words. Zoning is a commitment, a statement, a guideline, and a promise. And so I looked for the definitions of those 4 words, and I found the following. Under commitment, Wikipedia, a contract, a legally binding exchange of promises. Now, the city manager, the city attorney, or others may want to quibble with the above legally binding part of the commitment, and you can go ahead and do that. But I have some other words. Statement. It's an expression in spoken or written words of something such as a fact, intention, or policy. How about guideline? Official advice, an official recommendation indicating how something should be done or what sort of action should be taken in a particular circumstance. How about promise? Again, Wikipedia, a promise is a commitment by someone to do or not do something. As a noun, promise means a declaration assuring that one will or will not do something. Well, those words work, but perhaps expect is the best word. The definition of expect is anticipation of something happening, a confident belief or strong hope that a particular event will happen. I and other citizens count on zoning when we decide to live in Littleton and when we choose to live in a particular neighborhood in Littleton. We, the citizens of Littleton, expect the City Council to honor the commitment, hear the statement, follow the guideline, and keep the promise of zoning. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come down? You'll need to, if you want to come down, raise your hand, and I'll call on you so we don't have a crowd. Okay. Yeah.
I'm Dave Miley. I live at 1528 Meadowbrook Road since 1972. I've listened to Mr. Lawson's proposal, but tonight is the first night that I've actually seen the proposal. And I think it's premature to vote on this tonight until the citizens, and you as well, have had a chance to review this. I don't know how long you've had it, but this is the first time I've seen it. It appears to be a good idea, but I'm always suspicious about people who try to block development. And so I would recommend that we table this until a later session, until we and the citizens have all had a chance to review it. Thank you.
Thank you. Frank?
Frank Atwood, 7094 South Castilla Street. A detailed reading of the charter shows that election method is a decision of the election commission. And so I'd like to invite everyone to an upcoming election commission meeting that'll be considering instituting approval voting. If you're for it, I'd like you to contact me. If you're opposed, I invite you to contact Councilmember and former Mayor Jim Taylor. And if you'd like a less biased agenda than I might give you with regards to approval voting, I suggest that you attend tomorrow's 2 meetings in Boulder by the League of Women Voters of Boulder, their discussion of alternative voting methods. And so I look forward to the Election Commission addressing the issue of approval voting in Littleton. With regards to the rezoning, my feeling is, as a follow-up to Mr. Mitchell's statements, that citizens want no surprises. Rezoning is a surprise. No matter, you go in with the expectations and then there's a surprise. Littleton chooses to have zoning and I think being consistent and not surprising individuals with changes, I look forward to. I'm also, as I see the most recent economic plan being developed, I feel it has public-private partnership aspects to it. And as I stated before, I feel the City of Littleton has had a wonderful 2 to 3 decades with Riverfront, the Riverfront Authority, and that I would like to see a report from them as to show us what the future looks like. So thank you very much, and have a great day.
Thank you, Frank. Yes.
Good evening. My name is Gary Johnson. I live at 5753 South Prescott. Not too long ago, I stood before you and asked you to consider conducting a station area plan, both for the downtown transit station and the Mineral transit station. Tonight, I would like to take a bit of a step back and ask for a little bit broader request, and that you seriously consider taking a proactive approach to growth management. It's very consistent with other people that you've heard from tonight, and the pleas are that you do not react, but take a proactive position on growth management. Wise public policy decision-making requires full understanding of the impacts of those decisions. What are the desires of your constituents? Listen to them. What are the short-term and long-term economic impacts? Study them. And I commend you for a new economic plan. Looks like there's plenty of opportunity therein to do that. How will the city's infrastructure be impacted today, 10, 20, 50 years in the future? You need to understand them. And how do you define quality of life? And I challenge you to have a clear vision. Avoid proactive decision-making in favor of, avoid reactive decision-making in favor of proactive decision-making. Take the time to understand the long-term implications of your actions. It is only your duty to the residents of the city of Littleton that elected you. Thank you.
Thank you. Stu?
Good evening, Council. Stu Maher, 6696 South Crocker Way, Littleton. When the moratorium on rezoning or building or whatever you want to call it crossed my radar on Friday, I just thought it was out of context altogether, missed the point. And so I'd like to tell you what I think the point really is. The real issue with apartments, whether they are high-end, low-end, multifamily housing in Littleton, is not density, it's not the damn developers. The real issue is the entailments and the fallout from the 2007 Colorado legislature's House Bill 1338, the so-called Homeowners Protection Act, which, while it made homeowners who were victims of construction defect whole, it also opened the door for extraordinary, expensive, and protracted class action lawsuits, primarily involving for-sale multifamily and mixed-use property. Class action lawsuits, with or without merit, are expensive to defend, difficult to win, and most prudently disposed of through settlement with plaintiff classes and their attorneys. It is impossible today to finance and develop for-sale multifamily housing. And so the development community has turned to designing and providing housing that can be leased, test-driven, so to speak, for quality and sustainability, and eventually converted to home ownership. The reality in the South Metro multifamily for-sale marketplace year-to-date over the last year is closed sales are up 58% for April. Closed sales year-to-date are up 22%. Average days on market are down 50.7% to 34 days, with many of those days spent evaluating multiple offers. Average price sold is up 6.5% to $183,958. In Littleton, these are the established neighborhoods of high density, well and privately maintained, affordable multifamily housing we know as South Park 1 and 2, Steeplechase 1, 2, and 3, Riverwalk, the village at Bemis Library, and others. Would we like to have more for sale, affordable multifamily housing in Littleton? You bet. Would today's multifamily housing lenders and developers rather be building for sale homeownership housing? You bet. The economic and legal constraints that they face are simply intolerable for them to do so. And so they provide good, strong housing for folks who intentionally want to live in Littleton, pay premium rents, and I would suggest will eventually serve the needs of all of our housing demographics, both the entry-level buyers, the young professionals who choose to live here for lifestyle reasons, not because they want a single-family house with a big yard, and the seniors who need accessible, affordable housing to live here to continue their involvement in Littleton or to simply live near their grandkids who happen to live here. I would suggest you consider the real facts in the housing apparently dilemma that some people are seeing and deal with those. Please continue to reach out with your vision and your goals. Continue to reach out to your neighboring elected officials. We see the same issues in Centennial. We see the same issues in Lone Tree. All of their new multifamily housing is for rent. It just can't be built for sale. And that's the dilemma. So keep up the good work and keep making Littleton a sustainable place where people want and will invest and live.
Thank you, Sue.
Good evening. I'm Nancy Burke. I'm with the Colorado Apartment Association. And I'm here tonight to talk a little bit about the new dynamics we're seeing in multifamily housing. 3 years ago, we witnessed the highest vacancy rates we've seen in 30 years nationally. We were doing tenant retention programs, everything to keep tenants in our buildings. But today we are seeing a very different picture. Vacancy rates now today are at an all-time low. What we're seeing is a new renter nation emerging. 2 years ago, the Dodd-Frank Act was enacted by Congress. It placed increased regulations on financial institutions, barring many to be able to obtain the 30-year mortgage. Add to that corporate instability. Many want the flexibility to move to another market should a job arise in another city. We are observing a wave of seniors seeking to downsize. They don't want the home maintenance, and they're looking for walkable communities. They are looking to rent. We are looking at recent college graduates, the echo boomers, who simply do not want to own a home. They are choosing to rent. By 2015, we're expecting 7 million new renter households nationally. Things are changing. On top of all of that, Colorado is among the fastest of growing states in the nation. We're at number 7. Job growth is up, population is increasing, and the need for more housing options is clear. We need to rethink our attitudes about rental housing. Apartments are not poorly built boxes of the 1960s. Today, developers work with local communities to produce apartments that meet the residents' demands, enhance the neighborhood, and fit aesthetically within the community. The tenant of today is longer term, less transient. Their apartment is their home. Today's apartments offer amenities that rival single-family homes and communities. Studies show that people that live in social environments are more likely to stay there longer. Multifamily has a positive effect on property values as well. According to a study by the National Association of Home Builders, single-family houses within 300 feet of apartments increased in value by 2.9% a year versus the 2.7% for single-family homes not near apartments. The average apartment resident generates 40% fewer car trips. Single-family residents generate an average of 10 car trips per weekday. Apartment residents, only 7. Less cars on the road saves on infrastructure wear and tear, and it works to decrease the number of car accidents. From a business perspective, apartments are convenient and walkable and put residents closer to work, friends, shopping, and entertainment. 70% of the apartment residents spent money on goods and services within their local community. 25 to 30% of retail sales are generated from residents living near shops and restaurants. Municipalities need to attract new employers, and employers need workers. One of the main reasons firms relocate isn't taxes or regulations, it's the shortage of housing for their workers. Access to a diverse labor pool is the most important factor in corporate relocation decisions. When towns don't have enough housing for the workers that businesses need, businesses leave. Municipalities lose out on consumer spending and tax revenue. The vacancy rates in Denver right now are at 4.6%, compared to Littleton at 3.5%, which is a 12-year low for the city of Littleton. Matter of supply and demand. Littleton will definitely see rising rents if supply is not added. The key to success is a willingness to change old ideas and add new solutions to the mix, which includes updating the conventional wisdom about apartments. We aren't protecting our community by opposing higher density development. We're actually limiting future potential by pushing desirable households out. We have a great opportunity here in Littleton, and we should take advantage of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Marty?
Good evening, council members and guests and opponents and supporters. I've heard people who are in the business standing up here telling you what we citizens want. That's interesting. There's two sides to every story. The thing is about the moratorium is to cease and desist and study the situation and what's wrong. In the discussions that have gone on about the high-profile, high-density units that are being discussed, a lot of other issues came up. One of them, to the horror of some of us, excuse me, was the fact that we're not collecting impact fees. It was just pointed out that on the basis of what is an average elsewhere, $10,000 a unit, that we just sat on $20 million worth of impact fees. If that's accurate, or even if it's half accurate, we're talking about $10 million worth. If we can afford to, thank you, if we can afford to ignore this, that's interesting. But apparently we cannot afford to. If we fail to collect it, and we're talking about what's left, which might be $10 million, then if you don't collect it, you're talking about getting the money someplace else to supplement what you're missing. And what you're missing is going to either come out of higher taxes for me and everyone else, or a loss of services for everyone else, or a combination of the two. With that in mind, what's bothered me the most is the impact fees being lost or ignored, which would really say we should put this out there quickly and sit down and take a good look at it and meet our agreement on this end for in a year to get rid of it. But we need to look at what's wrong, and we got traffic, we've got a multitude of things. The things that bother me the most are high density and the impact fees. And with that being said, Littleton residents have never shown a desire for higher density, but we're constantly confronted by it. And why do we need more apartments? We already said that we have a vacancy rate, but it goes beyond that. I did a little study on apartments in the city and compared it to the city of Centennial. And what I found is that based on population, based on population, we have twice as many apartments in Littleton as they have in Centennial. And they have twice the population that we have. On a ratio of, we carry 4 times as many by population than they do. In other words, we've got a lot more than they have. Some time back there was a discussion, and it always has been, that we need to do our fair share in low-cost housing and apartments. It looks to me like we have done our share. It looks to me like we need to investigate and see how do we compare to the surrounding areas. Are we doing our share? The other issue that came up within the groups who are talking about this is, in fact, the bit of data came from one of the people who was looking at, I forgot which one it was either Brownstone or Nevada, said that we have more subsidized government housing in Littleton than the surrounding area does. And do we need more of that? I maintain that if we're going to protect the voters' taxes, that we need to take a good look at the money that's going down the drain. I question why we ever got into this position, because it looks like we're not doing a very good job. And to wrap it up, I would like to lay this out, because we're talking about high density, is go down to Alexander and take a drive around and come back and see, would you like to live there? Then take it and compress it into the size that will, the footprint over a brownstone, and see how you would like to have it sitting there, that whole bunch. They've got 349 units down there, and that's about what they're asking for. I say you can't get it in there unless you want it 6 stories tall. I hope that you will see fit to immediately protect our tax base, vote and pass this, and begin a dedicated examination to get this before you and to let the people talk about it and see what we can do about the problem that we have with this high-density housing. If we wait, you aren't going to collect a dime's worth of impact fee out of the remaining potential we have for more high-rise apartments. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Marty.
Carolyn Bradish, 2483 West Sunset Drive in Littleton. Regardless of how you feel about high-density housing, rental units, density, I urge you to consider one thing. Moratorium is a negative concept in terms of economic development. If you use this moratorium as a tool, you will shut down future economic development. You will discourage people who want to do business in Littleton and work in Littleton, and it will be a step backwards from the progress that this very council has taken so many steps forward with. I urge you to consider this carefully and to vote against this moratorium. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dave? And then Cindy.
Hi, I'm Dave Swan, District 3. First, congratulations. You all got back in the Littleton report. You're buried on page 3, not where you belong. Yeah, you need to put them back where they belong. Second, I got the scorecard, and I read it intently. And as I turned the pages, it was, there's an A, an A+, a B, an A. There was nothing in here about traffic. You know, my kids had friends when they were in the 2nd and 3rd grade tried to bring home a report card with just the good grades. I think it's time for you all to be honest with the rest of us. Traffic stinks, and it's getting worse. USA Today put out a report on the 10 worst commute cities in the U.S., and they linked it. They said, gee, if it's high density, it's congested. If it's congested, the traffic's worse. Wow. Putting more density and more congestion on our narrow streets that are already too narrow and not having developer fees so they pay for the widening is crazy, because you're going to stick the rest of us with it. You need a moratorium until you fix it. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave. Cindy?
Good evening. My name is Cindy Christensen, and I live at 7709B South Curtis Way. Mayor and City Council members, audience members, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this rezoning moratorium. I think that this proposal, however temporary, would send out a signal that Littleton is not open for business, despite reports the Denver metro area's housing market is one of the most vibrant in the country. The reason that multifamily is being considered by developers now is that, as we've heard, despite the housing trends that are moving upward, real estate professionals will say that building's for-sale project is just not financially feasible at this time, and therefore the market is supporting apartment developments. The other reason for it is that, as we just heard, the apartment vacancy rate is at a 10-year low. It's at 4.6% in the metro area, and I think I just heard it's even lower in Littleton. My gainfully employed 20-something nephew decided to move to Littleton in order to be closer to family, and he found that the new Alta Apartments at Aspen Grove had just 2 apartments for him in his time frame to look at. His timing worked out right, and he was able to get just 1 of 2 apartments available in a large complex on Mineral Avenue. The moratorium would also be bad for Littleton at a time when the population is aging. In fact, between 2010 and 2015, the number of residents aged 60 and above will increase by more than 25%, and the people aged 75 and above will also increase by over 25%, closer to 27%. According to surveys by the Denver Regional Council of Governments, seniors need and they want a variety of housing options available to them. They want a walkable, accessible community, and they want to live in a complex that has a sense of community. We want seniors already in the community to be able to live and age here. The City Council is set to consider and approve tonight the
Just yell. Yell.
Yell?
There you go. You got it again.
Okay. Maybe I'm not close enough to it. Anyway, City Council is set to do the economic development plan tonight. The plan responds to goals and ideas that were expressed in the community surveys and business surveys and the Inspire Littleton process and staff. Some of those survey results said such things as create incentives for business investment, strategic revitalization along existing corridors such as Littleton Boulevard, Santa Fe, and Broadway, update aging shopping centers, revitalize existing shopping centers, strategically expand retail outlets, and diversify revenue streams. All of these require strategic advancements in density. The rule in the real estate community is that quality retail follows rooftops. Being landlocked, there are a few ways for Littleton to expand rooftops. Redevelopment and infill development are 2 of those. That doesn't mean that we need to accept just any development that comes our way. The staffs will we still need to look at thoughtful development that will enhance neighborhoods. We need to hold developers in the city up to high design standards, but there are many ways that you can do that without a moratorium. The last thing we need is to destroy the momentum that we've created through the comprehensive plan, through the economic plan, and other efforts Littleton has made. With even a temporary moratorium that sends residents, staff, businesses, and real estate professionals and the region the wrong message that Littleton does not want to be part of the economic taking place. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you. Jack.
Good evening, council members, realtors, neighbors, friends, citizens. There's been a kind of mistake on this. I drafted this moratorium, which is the title we use from the marijuana moratorium, to give you time to look at it, to consider it. This isn't a building situation, it's a financial situation. We've got developers who want to come in, and God knows I love developers. I am one. And we've got people down here that need housing, and I want to see those. But we've also got infrastructure. I refer you to an expert's report that's coming up tonight on page 22 of 25. There says that an objective is to provide and maintain a high-quality public infrastructure that addresses the needs of residents, visitors, and businesses. It doesn't say developers that want to come in from out of town. It says those 3. And then they want to develop an asset management plan to identify maintenance and capital investment needs of the public infrastructure. Sounds great to me. I like it. I was there when some of this came up. Develop a Littleton Inglewood wastewater treatment plant long-range plan. And I'd like to take my hat off to the 7 of you who are the authors of this. You said that in your visioning meeting. This is what it came up from. These are the council goals for 2012 and 2013. The only reason for the go, go, go is not to build a better city. It's to let developers come in and make their bundle now without paying to buy their share of the infrastructure we've created. We've got this thing in here now. It's a great place to live. We didn't say in that moratorium, we're going to stop all building. We're going to drive realtors out of town. We're going to do any of that. None of that. We're not going to, we don't want to get a bad reputation. Lord, no. I want everybody that doesn't want to be here because they've got a bad reputation not to come. But I just would like you to take 2 weeks by passing this on first reading to gather information. Maybe if you'd had a study about economic, oh, you did have that study. That was in December. You've had that study sitting on the shelf. I'm just trying to get that going. And you can reverse a moratorium the day after you put it in if you've got the knowledge that you're comfortable doing it. This is not saying no building. This is not saying no multifamily housing. This is saying find out how much to charge somebody that wants to rezone. If 4 of you say we'd like to talk about this a little more, and I've heard a lot of you appropriately say, we'll pass it on first reading in order to have time to look at it, to get more input and study it, and you guys are sure quality able to do that. So I urge you to pass this on first reading tonight, gather more input, and see that it is really a financial issue of assets in the city, not a building issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Norm?
Norman Stucker, 801 Shadycroft Lane. My business is at 5439 South Prince Street, and I'm also chair of the Littleton Business Coalition. And I urge you to stop this moratorium tonight. This is dangerous. It sends disturbing messages to the business community. Our coalition has a mission to try to create a 21st century business environment inside our wonderful 19th century community. What do we mean by that? We mean we want a community that reflects the values that of Littleton, but is relevant to the needs, the changing needs that we see in society. The reality is that when Littleton was founded in the mid-1800s, 5% of the world's population lived in cities. Currently, it's 50% of the world's population who lives in cities. Studies show that by 2050, over 80% of the world's population is going to live in cities. That is a societal trend that is going to happen whether we have impact fees or whether Littleton places a moratorium or not. The fact of the world is getting more dense. Are we going to be relevant to that, or are we going to try to create something that is unnatural? I believe we need to keep up with where society is going and where the puck is going and not try to do something out of step with that. Our coalition is made up of small, medium, and large-sized companies. The small companies support the growth and the development that is happening in this city for several reasons. It's creating vitality for their businesses. The shops downtown, the restaurants downtown, they applaud this. They support this. They'll write letters to do that. They'll join our coalition. They've asked me to speak on their behalf. Our mid-sized businesses are excited about this because they see this as opportunities for employment housing. They see it as opportunities for contracts for their engineering firms, for their design firms. But our large-sized businesses, of which we have several, have a unique situation. They have invested hundreds of millions of dollars in Littleton. They just cannot pick up and leave. They're in purpose-built facilities that don't have a large residual value outside of their occupancy. I've sent the text of this moratorium to our 5 largest businesses in Littleton. 2 quotes. One is, wow, where does this come from? Another one from a company that has publicly discussed making another investment in Littleton in their facilities said, scary stuff, end quote. This is a dangerous moratorium that sends the wrong message to the community, sends the wrong message on economic development, and I'd ask that you stop this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Norm. John.
Mayor Brinkman, honorable members of the Littleton City Council, John Brackney, 2154 East Commons Avenue, Centennial. I'm the CEO of the South Metro Denver Chamber. Rarely in my 10 years have I heard so much reaction so quickly. I can't remember what time we heard about this on Friday morning, but since Friday morning to this evening, the Littleton Business Coalition, the Business Leaders for Responsible Government, our Economic Development Group, and our unanimous Board of Directors has asked you not to even consider this moratorium. This has spread like wildfire through the South Metro Denver business community. A moratorium is bad for business. No one in their right mind would implement a moratorium in their business, and any government that does so at their peril, saying we're not open for business. I urge you to have focus groups, study sessions, community outreach, planning sessions, planning commission meetings. Talk about this all you wish. And please, you have the full authority. There's lots of legitimate points tonight about transportation and density and the future housing, but make no mistake that this council and staff has done an extraordinary job in the last couple of years. This place is open for business. People are paying attention to you. They want to relocate their business here. They want to live here. They want to go to their schools. And by saying our schools, they want to say, by saying that pause for 8 or 9 months while we think about things, we're going to add uncertainty to the development process, sends a chilling effect throughout the entire Metro Denver business community. If you'd like to consider these, please do so. That's your volition. But flatly, tonight, say we're not going to consider a moratorium. Period. We urge you to simply reject this. You're welcome to consider any of the specific proposals. Please do so on behalf of your citizens and your businesses. But to consider a moratorium, even for a day, even for a week, even for 2 weeks, this moratorium, as it is in effect, says till January, is a really bad sign to the business community. We don't urge you to go through the details, but even in Section 1, it specifically says that building permit or any permit in relationship to a rezoning which would increase residential density and vehicle traffic, that is really broad, you all. But we urge you not to get into the details yet. Simply refuse this tonight and then proceed how you wish, whatever the volition of your staff and council is. Thank you for your service. You're doing a great job.
Thank you, John. Kay? And then Pam? Pam? Okay.
Mayor Brickman, City Council, Kay Watson, 7450 South Curtis Court, Littleton, Colorado, 80120. I want to, first of all, thank you for the service that you've given to our community and the difference that I have seen in the last several months in our community moving forward. I want to voice my opposition to the proposed building, zoning, whatever moratorium you want to call it. The first draft that I received said a building moratorium, and I noticed tonight that that's been changed to a rezoning moratorium. The decisions that you council members make will shape the future of Littleton. I ask one question: is Littleton going to be open for business? As a country, Colorado and Littleton recovers from the economic crisis of the past years. The last thing that we want to do is to put government inhibitors in the place of the market dynamics. We know that things are moving forward. Positive strides have been made in the last several months to allow our citizens, developers, and the surrounding areas know that Littleton is a community that promotes a sustainable, thriving, and vibrant economy for all individuals and businesses, both large and small. A moratorium on anything is very troubling, and it sends a message that our community does not welcome change and progress and is not open for business. Littleton is not going to stay the way it is now or the way it was. It is going to change. And I agree that planning is the way to do it, but a moratorium is the worst. It is the kiss of death. I urge you to think about the consequences of labeling my community, our community, with a moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam?
I've got a few graphs to project, so these are a little crabby, so I do want to thank you for your service, and I do appreciate it. The more I'm involved with this, the more I understand how much time it takes and how much consideration on your parts. Foster community involvement, communication, and trust. Just do it. And I'm Pam Chadbourne. I live at Crestline in Nevada in District 1. These are the council's goals. The last one is foster community involvement, communication, and trust. The vision statement includes that, and Michael Penny's statement says, give us feedback, so I am. So these are recent failures to achieve community involvement, communication, and trust. The comprehensive plan that's in work went straight from the planning board to the council last night. Why did the planning board not have presentations to the citizens with education about the content of that plan and review and feedback and comments before coming to the council? It's a question, and I feel cut out as a community member. The economic development plan, where is the citizen input that was presented in a special session at the on April 22nd? There's no regular meeting since then, and it's supposed to be voted on tonight. No public comment. Denise Stevens' memo says, City Council is being asked to approve the economic plan 2013. By who? Not me, and not a lot of the people that I talked to. We need more time to review that contents and understand what's in there. In the February 5th council vote on rezoning for Nevada Place West, the citizen reaction was overwhelmingly negative. The planning board recommended against approval, and yet the council approved that rezoning 4-3. These are failures to achieve that goal. So tonight, regarding the proposed economic development plan, I would like you to vote to table it to a later date. That means that it is debatable by you, and it requires a majority vote. You can choose a date based on a schedule that allows community education, review, and feedback of that economic development plan. I think you must do that to achieve your goal, and I'm going to suggest table to August 6th or August 20th. For the proposed residential rezoning moratorium, I'd like you to vote to consider it under consent agenda items. Large numbers of people have shown up to tell you we don't agree with high-density residential as proposed. So impose the moratorium. Involve us and the city together in consideration of options. Allow communication and rebuild trust. The economic plan has problems we should discuss. In the priorities, you can see some of those demonstrated. No alternatives are provided. No rationale is provided for the solutions. There are no pros and cons, and no risks are provided. Missing, there are things that should be included in this. The appeal of a municipal high-speed internet access system is something that is great and certain cities are doing. Why isn't that in there? What about environmental sustainability integrated with economic actions? And there's no risk to any of these. It's all happy talk. And other problems, and here's where I'm crabby. Canards, platitudes, generalizations, and declarations. These are statements. They're not considered outcomes of study. So potentially burdens are shifted from investors to citizens and businesses. And where is our theme? Where's our focus for the type of growth we want? For example, Scott Ranville's presentation on pocket neighborhoods. Boy, that would be cool to see in there. It's not. So for the rezoning moratorium, the city should take the time to update impact fees before any more rezoning considerations are made. Do not shift the infrastructure burden to citizens. Profit-taking developers should pay their own way. And cities should tell us what charges are made now. And I've got a page of stuff that says, what do we charge developers now regardless of what we call it? We should add that up and see what it is. That's part of what we use the time for. The city should also complete an impact assessment of a build-out of current zoning. How do we know that our current zoning is inadequate? How do you and us know the impacts of rezoning? Let's figure out first what the build-out impact is. That, to me, makes sense, and it's not been done.
Pam, you're going to need to wrap it up.
Okay. This is the page of time to accomplish what the city's actually doing for impact fees. We are not the problem. We are a vital part of the solutions. No one I've spoken with is against change, growth, or revitalization. We want controlled change, managed growth, and well-founded rationales. We see problems with poor fit growth, lack of rationale, and inadequate opportunities for public comment.
Okay, Pam, thank you.
Thanks.
Norm?
Good evening, everyone. Norman Brown, 6081 South Spotswood Street, District 1. A couple things that haven't been mentioned. You certainly have a lot of people that have come out of the woodwork for this, and I was almost daunted. I heard about danger, peril, and a kiss of death. It seems really frightening. As you know, I was on the Planning Commission for a while. If it was still light and you opened those doors, we approved a project where there's 3 single-family houses at the corner of Berry and Prince on that southeast corner. And I doubt if very many other than the colleagues I had on the Planning Commission could tell you at this point how many stories that building is or how many units. It is still approved. It can still be built. John mentioned the project on Raft Street across from the McDonald's, and I believe, Jerry, you probably remember that project. It's been mentioned a couple times. That's 5 stories. Neither of those have been mentioned in context when we talk about traffic or parking in downtown Littleton. The one closest is in the backyard of the city center and in the backyard of Nevada Place 2. I think these should be considered. This report, the impact fee feasibility report, you did not have that in front of you, I don't believe, when you heard Nevada Place 2 or when you heard the Littleton Commons over on County Line. I think that's a failure. Here's a quote from that report. In sum, creation of a Littleton impact fee system is a reasonable and equitable alternative to the prior facilities fee and would raise significant more capital revenue. As you know, I show up to a lot of these. I heard of the budget considerations last year in the budget process, last October and September. Capital was an identified problem, and you've looked at everything from a rental tax that's in the economic plan. You've got all kinds of things that you're considering. To ignore this one is problematic. The other policy issue from this report, and I'm reading from page 11. You guys, if you haven't yet, should have this in front of you. And Michael, if I'm incorrect in any of this, you and I think, are completely honest with each other. Correct me right now. I'd love to have you correct me in front of everybody. But this report also says council and staff turnover, and it has a dash, lack of institutional memory. Well, as you know, I track a lot of these things. I don't know if I should be institutionalized, but I have memory of all those things. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Norm. Anyone else? Sure.
Good evening, Council. Natalia Sakara, 6557 South Littleton Street. I'm here. I'm a 5th generation in Littleton. I graduated Heritage High School, and I currently go to Arapahoe Community College. And I'm looking at this and seeing you don't have the impact fees. These impact fees are going to affect the cars that are here in these apartment complexes, say if there's 10 units, they'll have 10 cars, because the way I see it, in Colorado, a car is a necessity. People who are my age are coming to Colorado. They ski, they go to the mountains, they go all over the place, and our public transit doesn't really allow effective of, going up to the mountains to go ski or, whatever you're going to do. Compared to like a single family home that only has 2 cars. So, there's more cars. So we need to really look at those impact fees. So I'm just asking that you vote yes to take time to look at and think all this stuff over. Because we want to do this effectively. We want to do it right the first time. And if we take the time, then we can make sure that we do this correctly. Because if we don't, then a couple years down the road, we're just kicking this can down the road, and we're going to have to look at this again, and we're going to have to see, we have to redo all these roads, we have to redo all this stuff, and I'm just asking that we look at all this, and we make sure we have all of our bases covered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Old guys like me ski also.
Yeah, but you take the little bus
I'm with you,
up.
Jerry.
Anybody else want to come down?
Mayor and members of council, my name is Patrick Pratt. I'm the Public Policy Director at the South Metro Denver Chamber, 2154 East Commons Avenue, Centennial, Colorado, 80122. I'm here tonight philosophically to urge you to not consider this moratorium this evening. From a public policy perspective, I view this as an attempt by a small group of concerned citizens, rightfully concerned citizens, to wrest away control of the public process from those that we've trusted to make decisions on our behalf. This moratorium and any moratorium really undermines the legitimacy of those that we've asked to study issues thoroughly, like our Planning and Zoning Commission, and then make recommendations to City Council. It also calls into question your ability as City Council members to adequately represent your districts and the community at large. For those reasons, for the philosophical public policy reasons, the South Metro Denver Chamber strongly urges you to not consider this moratorium this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Marty?
Thank you. I'm Marty Bruzak, and I live in District 4. Quickly, I'd like to thank Wendy for distributing the revised Addendum 2, page 25 of the proposed economic plan for the city of Littleton. I think they are in agreement with John Watson and Jack Randall and a lot of people who spoke. It says, note, development impact fees. More research is needed to estimate the potential revenues related to this type of change. All we see here are taxes that would be imposed on the citizens, the residents, and the workers in the city. And if you don't have a copy of it, it's sales tax increase would generate so many millions of dollars. Lodging tax, renters tax, occupational tax, internet sales tax, and even a Mayor Bloomberg soda and candy tax. I'm surprised they didn't put the bag tax on there also. But I guess what I'm saying is they have recognized that impact fees should be assessed to the developers, and I think it's high time we do that and halt the changing in the zoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come down? Susan?
Good evening, friends. It's nice to see you all together and to be back here. I think many of you in this audience know that I spent 16 years in one of or more of those chairs, so it's like deja vu here. Thank you for giving us a few minutes, each of us, to express our ideas. I've been watching you carefully, of course, because you never quite get over, being on the city council. And for the last 3.5 or so years, you've made amazing progress. You've been working together and working very well. You've hired a new city manager. You've really shown, I think, the world that Littleton is open for business. And we all know that there was a a conception across the metro area that previously that was not true. So that's real progress, and I'm glad for that. And I'm wondering, with all the work you've put into this, why would you now jeopardize that? Why would you turn your back on that effort? You're hearing from your business community and realtors in this community that this moratorium, I'm sure it's well-meaning, but it's not a good thing for Littleton. Could we just see how many business people and realtors there are here tonight? Because I honestly don't know. Fair number of people have taken time to come out. Change, as we all know, is inevitable. And not to change means we'll change, because the world will continue to change around us. And much as we'd like it, we can't remain an island unto ourselves. You know, the voters, in my opinion anyway, elected you for your vision, each of you, for your leadership, and for your courage to make the right decision. And I hope you will use those strengths as you consider this moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Anyone else? Linda?
I have a little bit of a different approach today because I would like to address the economic development plan itself and not the moratorium. And my name is Linda Knufinke. I live in the 4th District, and one second. And I request that you hold on, step back, give yourself some time to digest this economic development report. And I question, why is this being pushed through so quickly when the initial presentation was last week? So I would like to have a serious conversation and a debate whether this report reflects a good direction for the city and consider the impacts financially. And there are significant changes for the city with this plan. And keep in mind, it reverses Littleton's 20-year-old economic development philosophy, and it also impacts Littleton's credibility locally, nationally, and internationally. Computer issues, it's not liking me. So anyways, So in essence, I'm recommending that we don't go back, we move forward. Why are all these municipalities trying to be like Littleton? And now Littleton is trying to be like everybody else. Littleton should be innovative and visionary in the economic development plan. And all the economic tools, the TIFs, the PIFs, the sales tax, sharing arrangements, everybody else is moving away from these tools. Will these tools really generate long-term business for the city? It has been proven time and time again that these strategies have gone down in flames, and they could nearly bankrupt cities and schools. So under this guise of economic development, also please be aware that voting for this plan means that you support tax increases, corporate subsidies and donations, grants for property owners. So, it really does change the focus of business. No longer is business just business. Business today means shopping for subsidies. And once you entice a company with these incentives, companies will then hold the city hostage and threaten to leave the city for an even better deal that they can get from other municipalities. So do you want to be dictated to by these corporations? Do you want corporations to have this much influence in the city? And do you want to favor corporations over citizens? So I would encourage you to debate the significance of accepting this plan and if it's right for our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yep.
Lou Sullivan, 5940 South Bemis. And I'm concerned what I've heard about how our tax dollars have been used for infrastructure, such as the $100,000 for a sidewalk from Alexan to the light rail, because of our lack of impact fees. And this is not a moratorium on building, but rezoning. Most of these rezoning areas are zoned for businesses, so how could it be against them? I approve of the moratorium and would like to see you act on it promptly. I'm also concerned about the economic development plan. I know you have had more time to study it, whereas I've only glanced at it, but I see hints of eminent domain and possibilities of unwanted taxes on the citizens, how it seems to call for more high-density multifamily development when our infill spaces are very limited and need to be concentrate on developing retail, which would help bring in more revenue. And I've heard several comments about how these apartment buildings that are being planned, they keep bringing up issues of seniors downsizing. Well, in a week, I become 65. I qualified for my Medicare. I could not qualify for the rents that they're charging. And I am glad that I own my house, would not want to downsize. And after the Nevada Place 2 discussion, I was ready to go get a job at Merle's since it sounded like his employees could afford that kind of rent. And that's all. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Betty?
Evening. I'm Betty Harris. I live at 6281 South Cedar Street, and I am one of those seniors who 3 years ago at 66 moved out of a condo and bought a house so I could have a yard. So don't assume that you know everything that seniors want. Any person who has lived as an adult for more than 30 years would have or should have noticed that business goes in cycles, booms, and busts. When single-family homes are booming, retail does too. When single-family housing goes bust, developers can only get money for apartments. In a city of this size that has most of its retail scattered around town, rezoning retail to residential seems short-sighted. Developers are jumping at residentials because there's a low demand for a commercial building, and you know they have to keep making money. Once the infill is built up with apartments, there's no way to do a do-over. If one assumes that retail will not come back, then why build apartments? If one assumes it will come back, where will it be built if the apartments have already been used up all the fill-in space? And if you're looking for a legacy, when you're off the board, I don't think you want a legacy like that, and neither do you, Mr. Penny. Perhaps the plan is to, use the new economic plan to take property via eminent domain to, you're going to have to put in some retail after you've filled in all of the empty spaces with apartments. Maybe this doesn't make really good sense. So as one of those adults who has lived over 30 years, I believe that rezoning from retail to high density without impact fees is poor planning. We must impose impact fees rather than shafting the public one more time. And you can solve this entire problem tonight by using what we've already paid for, the $6,000 that we paid for that study, to find out what we should be charging impact fees. And for God's sakes, do it.
Anybody else? Jose?
Good evening, Council. Jose Trujillo, 5574 South Huron Street, Littleton, Colorado, 80120. I've been listening to a lot of rhetoric around here tonight, and oh boy, the developers are great. They're really after this stuff. And I'm going to bring up my favorite subject, parking, that I've been doing since 1966, and tell you that the city has failed, and I don't think it's been the city council's lack of failure, but the building department of the city of Littleton has requirements that require so much parking space for a given allotment of ground. That could have been put into some type of allotment or a building impact fee, because all these guys come in and they say, oh yes, we are going to start this great parking facility, parking enterprise, and all it is a bunch of crap. That's what it's been, because there hasn't been one parking space provided by a lot of these people. And you've let this go by the board, and so now I've heard in the past here, not too long ago, that council will have to deal with this. It's not your problem. Parking is our problem, the businessmen. And it just so happens that we let them get away with it. And I'm just damn sick and tired of it. Every time you turn around, somebody gets in and they reduce their parking. They don't have to worry about it. Okay, here's a good place to say, okay, now you're going to pay up front for some parking. I don't care if it's $20,000 a space. That's what it's costing to build a parking structure now. But give it to us. We put it in a fund. We'll take care of it. And we got enough money, we're going to build something. But that hasn't been their idea. It says once they get away with it, they immediately probably sell their business and get the hell out of town. So there you are. That could have been an impact fee, and that would have helped everybody in downtown Littleton. So just a little word of advice. It's not going to happen yet. They're going to go on letting them get away with all kinds of lesser amounts of parking, and that's what they're here for. Just give them everything free. So if they're going to pay an impact fee or whatever it is on their building permits, just do it. You're not going to get this money back unless you're going to start taxing us again, and I don't think it's going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. Anybody else? Yes.
Good evening, Council and citizens. I'm Leah Burkett, 5730 South Bemis Street. The word moratorium does have a bit of a negative connotation, and I wish maybe we could call it something else, like a timeout or something. But the way that I look at it is a time for us to be thoughtful and acknowledge that maybe we have some holes. We've been working on this visioning process. We have an economic development plan that's on the table for approval tonight, and a comp plan that's still at least a couple months out. I feel like we're in a vulnerable zone for entertaining the number of proposals that have come across to us recently. Secondly, the moratorium beyond the impact fees and the things other citizens have discussed, a concern that I have about rezoning is the number of council people that can approve the rezoning. The rest of the state, for those of you who don't know, require a supermajority for properties to be rezoned, and Littleton, being a home rule state, does not have that same rule. So very controversial projects can be rezoned without that supermajority, and this moratorium time would be maybe time to get something in place where we could require a supermajority. Rezoning and land use is one of the key issues that cities face, and it's not any small matter to change the map of how the city is laid out. So I think that should require a supermajority, and the moratorium would be a timeout to consider that. About the economic development plan, I want to ask that you table that matter and allow some public input into that process. I looked through it and had dozens of questions, as I'm sure the rest of the community does. And I watched your study session from April 22nd and saw in that 8-step process that the consultants had put together for you, communicate the vision and get buy-in from the community. And I don't see the buy-in process yet on the economic development plan, so I certainly hope that you will table that matter tonight. One of the key concerns I have from that is about transit-oriented development. This economic development plan sounds like it's paving the way for any transit-oriented project. I don't know if you want to get into specifics or how me point that out, but to me it sounds like it would pave the way for this project. So I hope that you'll at least consider getting some public input for that, and please do consider the moratorium because there are a lot of issues at stake. Maybe we can call it a timeout language.
Thank you. Anybody else? Carol?
I'm Carol Brezak, and I live in the 4th District. I'd like to talk a little bit about the general discussion item that's on the agenda tonight, the economic plan. One of the first things that I noticed about it was that there were 5 members. At least that's what we were told on April 22nd. The plan that's before you tonight only shows 4 members. The one member that's missing is the young woman who spoke on behalf of Nevada Place 2 and Littleton Commons. So someone very much pro-high-density, high-rise apartments. I kind of wonder if that's not why she was removed from the bio. It doesn't make me feel all warm and fuzzy that we had this person on the think tank, a member of a think tank that certainly calls into question a bias from the onset of her desire for high density. I think her removal from the report was deliberate, and it was an intention to deceive the public that it would probably go unnoticed as who these 5 individuals were. But it does concern me that you can't be honest enough and have all 5 of them and their bios in the report. I have several reasons why this plan should not be approved tonight. And then I listened to the planning board meeting with you last night, and the list of reasons grew. What struck me was the similar language used in the new draft comp plan and this economic plan. I couldn't understand how such similar language could be in both documents. And then I heard Tom Wooten attended a think tank, Tom Wooten, one of the think tank members of the economic plan, spent time at an all-day workshop with the planning board. All of a sudden it became very clear what's happening in Littleton. We have someone behind the curtain managing the entire process to achieve the desired outcome. Those of us that live here have been completely ignored in the process. If this economic plan is approved tonight as presented, the city manager will have carte blanche to go about looking for ways to spend the taxpayers' money through tax increment funding, incentives, sales taxes, abatements, public and private partnership, which means spending taxpayers' money on private ventures, and through a Littleton Urban Renewal Authority. All of this without input from the good citizens of Littleton, the citizens that put the money in the city coffers.
This document is more dangerous than the draft of the comp plan, but yet it will not go through any real citizen review like the comp plan will. Please stop before you act on this and ask the citizens if they really want their tax dollars spent on redevelopment of private properties. Do we really want to have urban renewal projects in Littleton? Do we really want to provide our tax dollars as incentives for big box stores and other retailers to come to Littleton? I don't think I do, and I bet I'm not alone, but I would be willing to participate in a discussion to learn more and then make my thoughts known. Now, there are other reasons that weren't so important, or it seemed important until I heard the meeting last night. One, I think it's premature to be discussing ways to increase revenue through taxes and fees. I think you need to have your discussion and pass an ordinance on impact fees before you start talking about taxing the citizens. Because this is an item on your general discussion agenda, the citizens are not allowed to comment except during this time period. We don't even get a chance to hear what the conversation among the 7 of you is going to be, and we're put in a position of having to address you. It would be a whole lot easier to address you after we've heard a discussion. This has been a complaint I've had about the way council has done their agenda for quite a while. I think the citizens ought to have a way to interact with the council on any matter that's of such importance to the citizens. Third, you have studies that are on the table. This is a stack of your studies. And to consider one in isolation to me is silly. I think you need to schedule a study session to put all the plans out on the table and see how you can make an overall plan. Allow the citizens to hear what you think and allow us to have a meaningful way to participate in the discussion. The culmination of all your work that has been done should not be done in haste. You've taken several months to get where you are. Now take some time to consider the whole of what you've studied and learned. Allow the public to comment before voting. And I do support the moratorium tonight, and I know I've run long, but I would like to inform the council that I am presenting the council tonight and the city clerk 2 petitions for, I guess this is a statement of intent, for 2 charter changes. And Leah set me up. The first one has to do with the zoning, and that we bring a 2/3 majority vote requirement that's already stated in state law, that if you have a non-approval recommendation for your planning board, it will require a 2/3 vote. If you have a petition filed with the city clerk 24 hours in advance of a hearing by a certain percentage of the homeowners, that decision would rise to the level of a 2/3 majority vote by the council. The second petition will be to change the charter, and it will change the way the council uses executive sessions. It will limit the reasons for going into executive session to 2, to discuss matters required to be kept confidential by federal and state laws, and to confer with an attorney regarding a legal action already filed in a court of law. The case name and number shall be cited for the public record, and final settlement and agreement shall be decided upon by a majority vote in a regular meeting of the City Council. The entire executive session shall be taped or digitally recorded in its entirety. This recording shall be maintained in the city clerk's office until those serving on the council at the time of the recorded executive session are no longer serving on council. This is actually, in the city of Boulder, they function without any executive sessions. I didn't go that far. I've limited it to some things I think that are reasonable. And I also think it's reasonable that any settlements that get made get voted on in public so the public knows how you are using our money to settle lawsuits. So Wendy's been very helpful to me in putting these petitions together and understanding the law, and I'm going to leave these with her, and I look forward to working with her to do what we have to do to get this on the ballot for November. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Paul?
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Paul Bingham, 236 West Delaware Circle. I'm totally in favor of this timeout. I like that wording. That's terrific. I agree with a lot of these folks. We've probably done a little bit of damage in using the word moratorium, but that's been done. I agree with John Watson, Jack Randall, Gary, Pam, and Norm on this whole thing. It can be short. It doesn't have to go along for 8 months. It can be any time when we think we're ready, got our act together to go do this. Also, it's for a very narrow segment of the market. It's not a total building ban. I would urge you folks to take action on this tonight, put it on the consent agenda, and talk about it. I agree with John Brackney. He says we need to study it. I think that's right. Put it on the consent agenda and study it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Al?
Al Clariou, 5616 South Crocker Street. I got to give you a little personal story, of course. Saturday morning we celebrated with, I don't want to brag, I don't know how many friends, our 40th year on South Crocker Street, which is about 3.5 blocks from this proposed gargantuan project. This is kind of the spirit of Littleton. We have had, out of the 40 years, Christmas parties in our neighborhood, both Loudon Street folks and Crocker Street folks, a few folks from this next street to the west, which skips my mind right now. For 39 years, we have done that. We've had the Christmas party, and Loudon Street folks block off the street. They've been doing that for about 10 years. And they have a party, and we go over there, and they hang out with us, and we hang out with them and have hot dogs and tacos. It's great. This is kind of what I bring to the table, and this is what has been so special for my family and I to live in Littleton. What I haven't heard is what's in it for us. The folks who have paid taxes all of these years, keep the streets going, the sidewalks fixed, yada, yada, on and on. And I have a pothole at the end of my driveway that's as big as a wash pan. Maybe is that part of the deal? Will we have extra revenue to be able to fix that kind of stuff? I'm not opposed to development, and I know something someday would have to happen on that property. I am disappointed you're going to tear down, it's a double whammy there. I'm disappointed you're going to tear down the old sheriff's office, or that's proposed. The building adjacent to it, the annex, is...
Al, I'm sorry. This is a quasi-judicial issue that you're going to talk about with this particular piece of property. It hasn't appeared before council. So I'm going to ask you to not make reference to that development at this point. When we hear that at council, you're more than welcome to come down in public hearing, but I don't want to jeopardize the process.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Anyhow, getting back to a more general view, I'll make my statements more brief. Casey Stengel is well known for a comment he was made when he was asked by some of his friends if the old Yankee boys went to a particular restaurant in New York City. He said, no. He says it's so busy there that nobody goes there anymore. Is this a situation for downtown Littleton? And Thomas Jefferson, I know, is the hero of so many of us, said that
You know, if we stack people up on top of one another here in the States, we're going to soon wind up looking like Europe. So I just have obviously a lot of feelings. We participated in the community, and great things have been done. It's obviously an exciting place to live, which is why everybody wants to come here.
Thanks, Al.
One last comment.
Yes.
You thought I was
still
done?
have time.
I'm amazed that the greatest economic system the world has ever known becomes threatened by a moratorium in a little microcosm city of Littleton. That people get so nervous over a moratorium of maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. Come on.
Thanks, Al. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one. We will move to consent agenda. And I think what we'll do before we go to consent, we'll take a 10-minute break, and then we'll return. Convene our meeting. Please have a seat. We are reconvening our meeting. Okay. Oh, I need my... That was seat. Did you see that? Yeah, I did. Want me to get you that gavel? Okay. Mayor Pro Tem down. Taking me out.
Not so bad, not so good.
Okay, we're going to reconvene. We're on consent agenda, and we have one item on consent agenda. That's 7A. This is a motion approving the Highline Business Improvement District's petition for appointment of a board member. Pursuant to Ordinance 25-1998, the council appoints members to the bid, and the bid has nominated Steve Rasmussen for the board of directors. I need a motion.
Madam Chairman, I move we approve consent agenda item 7A.
Okay, need a second?
Second.
A motion and a second to approve consent agenda 7A. Any questions or discussion? Okay, ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries.
9A is a resolution authorizing the City of Littleton to proceed with a financing program on behalf of Arapahoe Douglas Mental Health Center involving the issuance of mental health facilities development revenue bonds in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $10 million. Finance Director Doug Farman, do you want to say a few words about this?
Thank you very much. This resolution is being initiated by the Arapahoe Douglas Mental Health Network, and in 2012 they served over 1,100 Littleton residents and other residents throughout neighboring communities. They're a not-for-profit organization and 501c3 by the IRS. The proposed resolution is for the city to act as a conduit bond issuer or sponsor for the mental health network. In this situation, the mental health network could refinance existing debt obligations and take advantage of lower interest rates for significant annual cost savings. And this transaction is allowed by the Colorado state statutes. The proposed conduit issuance does not legally bind the city to the outstanding bonded debt, nor is it a loan or any cash outlay from the city. The city has acted in this role in the past, as recently in 2007, for the Rocky Mountain Center for the Blind. And the proposed bond closing is estimated to be around July this summer, and the council would again be reviewing a bond ordinance at that time. So this resolution just is an intent to pursue that ordinance, which would dictate the terms, the financing terms, and the loan documents at that point in time. We do have representatives here from the Mental Health Network and our bond council if you do have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions? Okay, Bruce?
Doug, couple questions, I guess. The main question is this. I've actually had experience doing this with Arc Thrift, where we were the position of Arapahoe Douglas. So this is sort of on the other side now with the city in that regard. But I guess my main question on this thing is, since the original loan was done with Colorado, where is it? Housing? Is that who was?
Yes.
Jaffa was Colorado Housing Finance? Why didn't they just go back that route? Or, I mean, there's the other one that's big is Colorado Health Finance Authority, and these guys do these things constantly where we do them once every 6 years. Why are we doing this versus having them go through a conduit where it's a lot more usual for this activity to occur, out of curiosity?
Yeah, I think we can go ahead and ask them to probably answer the question. That would probably be the best representation here. Michael Ellis is here from the Mental Health Network. He's the Chief Financial Officer.
Hello. Thank you for considering this. And basically, there's quite a few methods of doing this. You've mentioned two others, of course, and it's all about financing and about terms. And this seems to be the best available to us right now that is best in terms. We are now coming out of, for example, the Jaffa loan at 5.8% interest. Mm-hmm. And it was a good rate back then. Mm-hmm. And we're out of the prepayment penalty mode. And we're also working with our bank, the long-time relationship with citywide banks.
Right.
And they are buying the entire bond issue.
Right.
And so, anyway, there's just a lot of mechanisms in place that makes this the way to do it, and financially.
Well, but I guess what and I understand what you're saying, and I understand what you're doing. But help me understand, because frankly, the conduits get a small piece. When the issue goes through, part of the closing costs, if memory serves, was the conduit gets paid a fee for lending their support or sponsorship to the thing. At least that's, I think, what we did when we did Colorado Health Finance Authority on ours.
Well, actually, I think the more the practice is that the municipalities, whoever that is that's sponsoring the bond issue, they do it because it's a service to the not-for-profit.
Okay, so essentially that's the preference for going the muni route as opposed to going through one of the state agencies?
Now, what we do is we do pay for any costs that you incur.
Right.
So you have your bond counsel for you, and we do not want you to be out of pocket for that. So that comes out of the bond issuance.
No, and I understand that. But frankly, the interest rate side of it is going to be set by the financial institution, set by the markets, essentially. So whether it's citywide or
right. What it is for us, it's tied to the T-bill for a 5-year.
Right.
And it's so low that our term sheet is that there's a floor to it all, actually.
No, I think the logic makes perfect sense. I just didn't quite understand why your preference was to use us as a conduit as opposed to one of the state agencies that normally does it, but I think you're answering it.
Well, actually, we're a good neighbor of yours. We have quite a few buildings.
That's true, you are.
And in fact, we're a stone's throw right there.
Wow.
And we do a fairly good job of keeping our facilities up to standard. And so anyway, we're excited about, doing business with you again. And so it was just a matter, we could have done it with another municipality, but it just made sense that we come here and partner with you on this.
And I guess the last question I was going to ask was the source of funds. It says in here that bond counsel or our representatives are comfortable that the funds, the repayment credit risk is low, the funds flow is going to be available to meet the obligations. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Basically, the bank is buying all the bonds, and they look at it just like a regular loan. So we have a collateral pool of our buildings, and it's a 70-30 ratio, loan-to-debt ratio. So it's backed by all
Real
our
property.
assets, yeah.
Okay.
So our building assets. Not all of them, but most of them. And so it's a 70-30 ratio, and in fact, we're better than that, so that's the reason why there's little to no risk to this.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions? Jim?
One of the things that's in the memo is that the loan could possibly be up to the $10 million. Is it anticipated it's going to be that close to that full 10, or is it going to be something less than that?
I think it will be very close to the 10 million, but it will be slightly under that.
Okay.
Any other questions? Need a motion?
Madam Chairman, I move that the proposed resolution authorizing the City of Littleton to proceed with the financing program on behalf of the Arapahoe Douglas Mental Health Center involving the issuance of mental health facilities development revenue bonds in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $10 million be approved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries.
Okay, item 9B. This is development or the approval of the economic plan. I want to just set a little bit of context on this. This plan is this document is really the culmination of almost a year and a half of work by the council. We have, since I've been on council, this has probably been the largest undertaking that we've done in terms of a long-term project that we've included a great deal of study and research and outreach on. And the outcome of this is in many ways very standard economic development plan. We looked at plans from, we started this out, and I think, Council, if you remember, we got about a 5-inch thick stack of paper from the city manager of other municipalities' plans. Very, very standard. Kind of they all have a core to them that's somewhat similar, but everyone has their nuances and their differences, which makes everybody unique. Essentially, and we've been saying this all along, this is really a toolkit. This is really an opportunity for us to put more tools in our toolkit than the economic gardening program, which was all we had offered before. I've been on council for 6 years, and I have heard every year continuously from the community, from the businesses, from everyone, that they really, why don't we tell the story? Why don't we? Littleton's one of the best kept secrets. And part of the reason that it is because we've never had a real economic plan, an economic development plan, where we're able to put together parts and pieces that all look like they came out of the same place. There are a lot of legs, arms and legs to this. There's a lot of depth and breadth, but there's also a lot of flexibility. Everything in this plan that has any substance to it would require coming before council. This is not a plan to push through an eminent domain program. You're looking at 7 people who have no intention of doing anything about eminent domain. But this is a plan that has a lot more potential for us to be able to compete and to, quite honestly, provide a growing and thriving community, because that's what we were charged to do. Michael, you had some things you wanted to add to that, and then I want to open it up if council has any questions.
Mayor, I just wanted to emphasize what you said, which is, at least it's our belief as staff, that the document before you is a policy statement document. There is no ordinance modifications within this item, such as discussion on urban renewal authority, tax increment finance, sales tax sharebacks. Any type of public-private partnership would require council adoption. Again, there is no ordinance delegating any of that authority to the city manager. This is strictly a policy statement of the items that are within that document. So I think it's important. And the citizen comment relative to, I'm not going to get her name right.
Jessica.
Yeah, it's her last name. Liz, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jessica. We did attempt diligently to try to get a bio on her, and we're not able to do it, and it wasn't a intentional thing to get her name left out. It just, as we were holding the document and getting it into you, and we certainly can add her name back in, we just don't have the bio on it. She has changed careers and I believe got a law degree, got married, and that kind of stuff, so who knows. But
Well, I did include her in my PowerPoint presentation, which detailed the participants in the think tank, so there's okay, thank you. The other thing I think to note is that certainly any taxing that's done it requires voting. So that's not something that will be done, without the proper approvals there. Council, any questions, any comments? Bruce?
I do have a comment, and I look at our goals up on the wall there, and when we started this council, this was brand new. There were no goals. There was no vision. And it took a lot of discussion to get those, and they're certainly not perfect. And, if we were to meet again tomorrow and redo them, we might find better wording or different ways or things to add. But it made a tremendous difference to us to at least start on some common ground of what it was we're trying to do. I kind of view this the same way. It's not a perfect document. And there's things in it that I look at that I say, I'm not real comfortable with that. And I'm certain that something that I'm very comfortable with in there, someone else might look at and say, I'm not comfortable for that. I don't know much about that. But it's better than not having something in place. These are better in place than not being here at all. They've made a tremendous difference for us. In this whole area of economic development, it really matters to our community that we have the highest levels of quality. As the mayor said, it's a toolbox. If you don't want to use that tool, take it out of the toolbox. Don't use it. If you like that tool, there's an opportunity. Maybe you hadn't thought about it. I think it sets the same tone that it's the best circumstance that might have been, the best circumstance might have been to have this thing developed 5 years or 10 years ago. It would have been the best circumstance if previous councils and previous administrations had, when the recession was occurring and the economy cooled, to sit back there. And now the plane's taken off, and we're actually flying this plane, and we're fixing and working on the plane while it's flying. And that wasn't our choice. That's the situation that we're in, and I think it would be wrong on the part of this council not to take some action in terms of economic development. So that's the case that we're faced with. And, we could sit here and table it, and we could delay it, and we could do all kinds of different things. But the fact is, we're on the plane, it's flying, and we do need to provide some form of, just like we did with up there on the wall, some form of understanding of a direction that the city can take. 2 years ago, there was not a single strategic plan in this city, not a single one. And I look at this and this as part of strategic planning. It's not the be-all, end-all, but it shows a direction. And I feel very strongly that to not do this is a less favorable outcome than any of the concerns that anybody expressed. And I wanted to say that because I do have, and I have expressed, concerns about different points of view. I think I still have the ability to do that as a council member. This doesn't lock me into anything. And as the mayor said, tax increases, they're going to be voted on. Any kinds of specific kinds of things, they're going to be discussed, and they're going to be part of an ordinance, and they're going to go through that process. So thank you for the time to say that, but I thought I needed to say it.
Phil.
Thanks, Bruce. Although I have a hard time saying tax increase. So it was better that you said it first. One of the things that I think almost everyone here has probably become aware is that at some level things are going faster. And it was mentioned from the citizens, or one citizen at least, that we should be proactive and look to get ahead of the curve. What's in here is not necessarily everything, but one of the things I've reached a conclusion is when you take an assessment of the community and our properties and our opportunities, from a city's perspective, there's only limited tools that are available to encourage some economic side, and it's not just limited to businesses, in my mind. And what this does is it outlines a tool chest that's there that says, hey, when it makes some sense, we're going to consider some things that are okay, at least to bring up in discussion. There's some things that aren't in here. I won't go through some listings, but there are. It doesn't have everything that's listed that could be listed, but it has a lot. And what it does is it allows us and staff and to some extent citizens and others to at least be able to kind of reach into the box and say, hey, there's some things that are there that are possible. Now, in the end, it gets evaluated, and there will be a vote required. And it talks about some things that we know from our own discussions have a pretty high threshold. It'll be up to folks to be in a position to read some of those, but it doesn't say, hey, every project that comes. And I guess one of the things that folks don't get to see is all the things that don't come through in projects that don't move ahead, that gets squashed or squelched or dealt with or modified before they even reach certainly council or even the planning board. So I think that this has in it the ability for us to be proactive. And I just wanted to mention some things. The city does have a comprehensive plan. We're looking at reviewing it, but it doesn't mean that we've abandoned the values and the character of the city and the city that we love, and that's very, very important. And at some point in time, John, we'll have a chance to sit down and talk about quality of life. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Jim?
Go ahead.
I think the city has done quite well for not having an economic development plan. But now I think it's time to take the next steps. Successful cities start with a yes attitude. And I think we're developing that yes attitude now, and we need to continue that. We have to toot our own horn. We have to be having a proactive strategy for marketing and branding update. And in other words, I think Littleton's got to do more in order to be competitive. And this plan is starting us on the direction that will cause that to happen.
Jerry?
I think we cause our own problems by not moving forward. We haven't moved forward on the comp plan for way too many years. Even last night when we talked about the comp plan, while it certainly is not a perfect comp plan, the fact is that it is better than what we have, and it can be worked over the years. But I think by council not acting on so many things, we're causing our own problems. Littleton has had the perception that we were closed for business, and that perception, I think, has definitely changed within the last couple of years alone. And I do have a question that I'll find out later how long it takes to get impact fees and that kind of stuff, but because I really think those are some of the issues that were going on tonight. But I guess the bottom line for me here, the economic plan is not perfect. There's no doubt about it. It is not perfect. And I do think if we wait for a perfect economic plan, it's going to turn into another revised comp plan situation where we'll be waiting 15 years from now for an economic plan. I would rather get this thing on the table now. There's some things in there I don't like. I don't like all the taxing and all that good stuff in there, and I'd be hard pressed to make that happen. As long as it cannot happen, I'm willing to support the economic plan.
Bruce?
Yeah, I'm relatively in violent agreement with my esteemed colleague, Mr. Valdez. So there you go.
2 nights in a row.
At least, yeah, incredible.
He's still my heart.
I think Jerry's right. Perfection is the enemy of good. I mean, we've heard that, and that's in fact true. There is no such thing as a perfect plan, regardless of how much study is done, because none of us individually or collectively is smart enough to discern all the intricacies and variabilities of all of the constituent elements that makes up the community of Littleton. There's too many points of view. My idea of a perfect plan is definitely not going to be the mayor's view or Councilmember Valdez's view or a citizen's view. However, I think it is eminently preferable to send a positive message that says this is what we value about quality of life in this community. And I think what this document and what the work by the think tank and the symposiums and the study groups and the people we've had come in from Lakewood and Denver and Glendale and the various visioning elements and some of the other groups that have participated have helped crystallize what we got in terms of a lot of citizen input broadly throughout the community via the citizen and business surveys as well as the Inspire Littleton program. Randy from Planning Commission or Planning Board last night said they had 400 and some odd pages of comment or feedback from the community broadly. That's valid input. That's citizen input that helps drive this kind of a document. So what do we value as far as our quality of life? Some level of incentives for business investment to be determined on a project-by-project basis, not carte blanche. Not going to, certainly, in my opinion, speaking for myself, not eminent domain. Okay, we can, but there's a lot of shades of gray that are in that kind of a conversation. We value engaging property owners and developers. I mean, I think that's, if you're going to have a successful community, you want to have dialogue and partnering that goes on at a wide variety of levels. Strategic revitalization of major corridors, I think, goes without saying. Restoration of underperforming shopping centers and sustainable or strategically expanding retail options provides the sales tax revenue that is the secret sauce. I like the diagram at the front of this thing, which has the economy, has commercial, has residential, has housing. It doesn't have schools in there, but schools are an equal partner as well. The community has to integrate together, and the end result of this is the intent is not to raise more tax revenue. The intent is to support all attributes of the community, and if there is a problem we're trying to solve, it's how do we honor our fiduciary responsibility to the citizens and the homeowners and the business owners to help their values, their property values and their business values go up so that they are successful in the community that we all call home. A couple others, increase senior housing options and attracting more students for K-12. Again, this speaks to the integrated nature of what we look at as quality of life in the community and why it's important. So for all those reasons, yep, totally agree. Not a perfect plan. Can't be, never will be, and we could, consider it and noodle on it till the 22nd century, but it still wouldn't be a perfect plan. And at the same time, I think if we get this out there and we communicate to broadly that these are the types of things we value, that we have done something very positive for the city. Thank you.
Peggy?
Yeah, I've got several things, so I hope I get them all straight. First, I'd like to ask, after we vote on this, if I could say something before we adjourn. So second, and I did say this to the city manager before the meeting started, I'm very disappointed that what we agreed to put in here is not here. After the first presentation of this, I asked if we could have examples of things that we actually are doing, have been doing, be put in at appropriate places for two reasons. One, as I say, as examples of the kinds of things we're talking about, and two, to indicate that indeed we aren't stagnant. We haven't been, getting sucked back down the drain. We have been doing things. So I'd like to have those added because it's not a change in the content. Second, that wonderful, the book that we were requested to read related to visioning, the iceberg, my iceberg is melting. There's a lesson in that for us to remember, and I'm sorry it's not stated somewhere in this document. The penguins learned that when what they value was no longer available, they would move to where it was. Well, what they valued was food to eat, for one thing. And so that's been the history in this country, in the world even. People will move when what they want, need, love is not there. So what I'm sorry is that there's not any statement in here really strong that says that the city must not sacrifice as it does these things, which I support, that we move forward. It must not sacrifice what the citizens in the neighborhood say they value. Otherwise, we lose those people. They're bound to move. So anyway, I hope we'll keep that in mind. I support this only with the understanding that what we're doing now, we keep doing, but the things we're not doing now that are in here that require action will come to council for discussion and approval. And I think the mayor has made that clear and other people have made that clear. Really important. Thank you.
Peggy, do you want to make a motion?
I move that can we accept this rather than adopt it? Does that achieve essentially the same thing and still put a little more emphasis on adopting the other issues?
I don't see a real distinction between the two. What is your concern with adopting versus accepting?
It sounds as though in my head that we're approving, if we adopt, all the kinds of things as opposed to they would come before us for individual approval.
I think this being brought to you by staff for approval as a policy direction, and it's been made clear that those things that are included in there would require to be brought back before you for further action.
Okay, so you think that takes care of it. Okay, so I move that we adopt the economic plan.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt the economic development plan. Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries.
Yay. Okay, a couple of things. We wanted to bring back Scott's City Design Competition, and I also wanted to put into the general business the issue of the moratorium. So why don't we go ahead at this point and in regard to Scott's project, he asked us specifically, let's see, 3 questions, I think. Endorsement, which would mean permission to use the city's name on marketing materials and the logo. He wants a city council member to be a judge, which if we do this, I don't know that we have to make that decision. We'll have an election in November, so this isn't until February, so I think we can make an agreement that someone will, but I don't think we have to pick anybody right now. And then agree to review the winning entries in a study session. So unless there's any problem with any of that, does council want to bless this? Yeah. Phil?
Well, I was going to make the motion that we endorse the city design competition as outlined by Scott and Jennifer Ranville, that we at least from as far as a long-term commitment, we'll look to find someone to serve on an adjudication committee, and that to the extent we can have a good amount of time within a study session sometime after February 14th, we would review the winning entries within a study session.
I'll second that thorough motion.
Okay, we have a,
I'm getting over my cold already.
we have a motion.
For you, Jerry.
And a second. Any discussion? Ready to vote?
The vote is unanimous. The motion carries.
Okay. The issue of the, let's see, zoning moratorium,
Residential zoning moratorium.
rezoning, no.
Yes.
Is that what they, okay. Michael, did you want to address some of these issues?
Happy to, Mayor.
And then also the city attorney, I think. Go ahead.
Why don't we let City Attorney start?
Okay.
I was taking notes as the public was coming up to comment, and I have a couple of thoughts for you to consider. First is just a procedural matter. This was not brought to you on first reading. This is not an ordinance that was posted on first reading. So procedurally, we would like to see the ordinance. It would need to be posted as an ordinance on first reading and brought back at that time, and then under your legislative rules, you can have a public hearing at that time. And I think everyone would agree that that's an issue of fairness to the public, because people saw this under public comment. They didn't see it listed on your agenda as an ordinance on first reading. Members may not have thought to come down and comment on it, and so we would want that fairness to all members of the community to come down and comment on it. Second, I would ask that, doing a moratorium is a serious matter. You're suspending completely the rights of property owners, and so we don't want to take this lightly or rush into it. I would ask that you allow us to come to you in executive session to talk about some of the legal implications of a moratorium. There's a number of statutes and case law that come into play, including common law vested rights, the Vested Rights Act, the pending ordinance doctrine, your vested right ordinance that you have in the code, the impact fee statute, case law regarding moratoriums. There are due process concerns and taking concerns that we're dealing with here. So I would ask that we have an executive session to discuss those issues. And then also that you seek input from your professional staff, from your planning staff, on how best to implement this moratorium. We certainly can do that if that's the direction you give us, but we do want a moratorium to be narrowly tailored and of limited duration. And I think adopting or looking at an ordinance that was pulled from a marijuana moratorium and trying to take that round peg and put it in the square hole of residential high-density rezoning may not be the best fit. So I would ask that you allow us, if you want to pursue a moratorium, allow us to bring an ordinance back to you that would stand up against legal challenge. And I think that is it. Thank you.
I have one question. Maybe.
Okay.
Why executive session? Why wouldn't it be just out in the open for everybody to hear?
Because if we discussed it in open, I would be laying out the playbook for developers to challenge your ordinance.
But it would just be clarifying an ordinance, would it not?
I would be addressing concerns with you of things to take into consideration, of ways that the ordinance might be challenged, or legal claims that might be brought once you put a moratorium in place.
I have
Michael.
a couple questions.
Okay.
So
to what she's already said?
related, but I was going to ask Michael, but
Okay, well, maybe if you don't mind, we'll let Michael go ahead, and then we'll have questions.
And I, too, was taking some notes. And I would just echo what Kristen said, which is we can certainly take whatever policy direction the council has and go to work on it. What I wanted to do was talk more about where we are, what we've done, and what's currently on the books. So just for clarity's sake, and then I was not fully prepared for this evening, but I have a map that I'll get up if council will allow me, and we'll fold it and put it up there here in a second. But we do have impact fees. They are on the books. We have impact fees specifically for residential, single-family, multifamily residential. And then we have what was called or is called a public facilities fee for commercial. In the residential fee, that fee is, well, I'll get to the details of it here in a second. And obviously, council is aware we do have an adopted comp plan. You had a joint study session last night with the planning board in finalizing the revision, first comprehensive update in a while. A couple of the other questions that were asked or some general statements made around adequate service delivery for water and sewer. You all know Denver Water handles water, and we have, as I think you all are aware, sufficient capacity in our sewer treatment plant, as I understand, dealing with the expansion not too long ago and some, I'm sure, heated debates around that. And we do require traffic studies, and the city code requires the developer mitigates those public impacts. Two recent examples that we have, one of which I will broadly talk about because Broadstone will be before you, but there are public improvement requirements associated with that project. And Breckenridge Brewery, just off the top estimate is there's about $400,000 in public improvements. Those improvements require a financial letter of credit or some type of credit bond with the city of Littleton until that project is put in place, and then they have to warranty it for a year under the current code. A shortfall that we have, apologize if I'm jumping around a little bit, is, and I believe it was a citizen who mentioned our lack of, and certainly Councilman Beckman also raised the question of lack of long-range strategic plans and capital improvement programs, and I would concur with that. In fact, we've talked about that during the budget process and several times since then. And we are in the process of, as quickly as possible, developing our long-range capital needs plans. Specifically, Public Works has the vast majority of that work, as well as we're implementing an asset management program where we can enter the buildings, the age of the roof, the boilers, all the irrigation system. We can start to input everything into it that has been historically a public investment, and then start to get at what our long-term capital needs really are, because we do not have that right now, and it is our desire to put that in place and be able to communicate that to you and the general public. And it's also, to an extent, it's necessary on the assets to determine what an appropriate impact fee would be. What happened with the impact fee, it was late last year when we were looking at a project that was coming through. The city attorney and I reviewed the public facilities fee, which is what it's called for commercial development. That public facilities fee is based upon 8% of the fair market value for the land. So regardless of the use that's on there, it's a fair market assessment. And so if I've got a particular use and city clerk purchases that piece of land from me, pays the city an 8% public facilities fee regardless of the impact of that use. It could be the exact same use, no additional impact to the community, and that they're paying it. So the determination was made that it did not pass the legal nexus. So our next step in that was as you've heard alluded to this evening, the staff contracted with Ford Frick to do a feasibility study. It was not a full-blown legal nexus, defensible dollars and cents thing. It was a question of, is it worth spending the larger dollars and time to determine whether or not those impact fees would be appropriate, and would it be worth going through that process? Because there's two issues at stake here as I see it. One is, as you've heard from citizens, the impact fee for residential is only for open space and parks, and I'll get to that here in a second. And then the commercial, as I just said, we didn't have a legal nexus based upon use. And so in the commercial, we wanted to make sure that we had that legal nexus so that they were paying their fair share. Now, this is impact fees to pay for police and fire, museum, those types of pieces. Infrastructure improvements, public infrastructure improvements adjacent to the property, off-site to the property, are determined through traffic studies and go through the normal processes. And I just gave you an example of Breckenridge Brewery that's going to be putting in over $400,000 worth of improvements. So in late January, I believe January 17th, we had a presentation from Ford Frick on that study, and we wanted to move forward with doing the full impact fee analysis and actually go into the depths of it and be able to determine what an appropriate fee would be. Life gets in the way of things. We had turnover in staff. We had people resign. We hired new people. All those fun kind of things occur. And we are currently under contract with Ford Frick. We do have nothing's written in stone, but July 9th is our current date when that impact fee presentation will come to you. And then we will be prepared, should council desire, to move forward with an ordinance on first reading on July 16th. Now, this brings me to the residential piece, because the council and the community made, at least in my estimation, made a conscious decision to only charge the impact fees on residential relative to parks and open space. What we have asked for, because we concur with all the comments here tonight about the development paying its own way, what we're going to be presenting to the council is a shift in philosophy, at least historically, of saying the residential should pay more than just parks and open space fee, which right now in a multifamily unit is $2,550 per unit. So jumping for a second on Littleton Commons, and this is, I appreciate the time because it's somewhat convoluted. So Littleton Commons started as a commercial subdivision back whenever. And I don't have the numbers, the exact numbers, but they paid a public facilities fee back in the day for that commercial at time of subdivision. They then subsequently came in, obviously, as you know, for a rezoning. That rezone for the residential for 385 units. That then kicked in the residential open space fee, which was $2,550 times 385 units at $981,750. Well, they had already paid some, and again, we can get you specifics if you're interested, but we credited them for the original public facilities fee that they paid, and they still owed us some more for that residential piece. But it is still in the context of this open space and parks. So some of the shift in methodology that we're going to be asking you to contemplate is what you're hearing from a lot of the citizens, which is that's not the only place that residential has an impact. Residential has an impact in these other areas. But that was not, I can't tell you whether it was contemplated by previous councils and administration, but it is part of our question that we have asked. One more thing, and then I want to show you this map. The other piece that had been requested that we're moving forward with is this housing market overview. And, I mean, some of these dates are because the consultants are busy now, because for all the same reasons that we're having these discussions this evening. But Patty Silverstein, who's probably one of the experts in the housing market analysis, I think most of you are familiar with her. She will be presenting at the August 13th study session an economic overview discussing trends influencing the Metro Denver market, as well as housing trends focus specifically in residential trends in Arapahoe and Douglas County. So we'll have that for you in August 13th. We push both these folks to move as quickly as they can. It's just a workload standpoint, not a level of interest standpoint. So I thought the other thing that I would do, based on primarily what Kristen just identified, is talk to you, if I may, show you the projects that are out there, those that are already in process, and discuss this question about timing of building permits and when we could get things adopted by the council, hypothetically, and what could potentially slide through the cracks.
Those are the projects we saw on that link you sent us to.
That is correct. But this is so the public may see it as well. And I apologize, I did not have a chance to print this smaller, so I will just move the map.
Turned around.
Oh. I think I've watched enough people do that. I'd learn.
I think you can make it smaller.
All right, well, let me just start. So no, other way, Doug. So let me go to the key up at the right. So what we have on here are approved projects, approved plan developments, those rezoned sites, and then the potential rezone site. And obviously, any site is a potential rezone, but the ones that have actually contacted us. So I'm not trying to minimize the concern that's been raised this evening, because we don't know what potentially could happen. So first, the projects that are approved projects are in green. So we've got Breckenridge Brewery, Designs by Sundown, Littleton Commons, my finger is way at the bottom, Health South, Anthem Memory Care. Those are projects that are in place. They're moving forward in whatever level they're doing. I'm sorry, in Nevada Place as well. So those are projects that obviously the moratorium or a moratorium wouldn't address. They are required to pay the open space and parks fee under the current ordinance for impact fees. And again, staff is very much with the citizens saying that these folks should pay or potentially should pay for additional impact fees beyond that. Again, a policy question for the council. Approved PDs are primarily Ensor and Marathon. Those already sit out there. There are 900 residential units approved at Marathon. They are coming in for a rezone on the commercial site. They are not changing those 900 residential units. So the roughly 2,000 number that's out there, that's 900 of those numbers. We don't have a number on what Ensor potentially could be for residential. It did not have a limitation in that fashion, but there's also no activity currently moving forward on Ensor. We would anticipate that there would be some type of PD amendment coming through. What that looks like or what it could be, only time will tell. The two that are potentially, there's a South Suburban piece of land down off of Broadway and Jameson, that's down here. They've come in. It's for sale right now. It kind of ebbs and flows. Contracts fall apart, that type of thing. And then Bellevue and Federal up at the north end of town. Folks have come to us and talked to us about it, but again, no application that has come through. So what project would come through prior to us being able to present to the council relative to that July timeframe an ordinance? The only one that we believe that can move quickly enough would be Littleton Commons. As I just described, they already have an agreement relative to their impact fees. And so that's the one project in terms of shifting it to a building permit, because that is probably going to be one of the recommendations that we have, is we shift it away from the subdivision. I'm getting into details of an ordinance, but so that's really the only one that we believe in this short time frame has the potential to apply for a building permit. The other projects, they have not either finalized approvals or Nevada Place. We don't believe that there's any chance that those guys could file for a building permit prior to that time frame. And then the three rezones that we know about are already in place. That is Meadows at Platte Valley, Broadstone at Littleton Station, and the commercial piece that I already spoke about. And so, as Kristen already pointed out, there are legal ramifications of trying to stop those projects since we have already legally accepted their application, and they've been in actually for quite some time. So just wanted to kind of talk about what the breadth of this is. I've got other things on this map. This wasn't intended solely for this purpose, but we've got a lot of apartments that we can discuss at a later time. So we'd be happy to go to work on anything that you desire us to work on, but we do have a time frame. We're feeling good about that July 6th, 9th, July 9th, and then returning with an ordinance, assuming the council approves of the philosophical approach that we're taking. So I'd be happy to take any questions.
Bruce.
Michael, could you just zero in again on the apartment numbers of zoning that already exists today? You went through it kind of fast.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, and I
catch the numbers.
didn't do the whole list of it. So you've got 900 units, I'm going to go from east to west. You've got 900 units in Marathon. You've got, I'm going to need some help, Glenn, approximately 325 units at Broadstone. Somebody else is going to have to tally. 72 units at Nevada, and Broadstone has not been approved. I'll try to, so the Marathon has already got the plan development for 900 units approved, whether you can build it under the current PD, but approved at 900 units. Broadstone has a request in for rezone for 325 units. Nevada Place has been approved for 72 units. Littleton Commons has been approved for 385 units. And Meadows at Platte Valley are being requested, is in the process for, it says 250 multifamily units with some commercial as well in there. So I don't know what that tallies.
Roughly 2,000.
Roughly 2,000. There you have it.
Thank you.
So of that being requested, not already approved, 325 units at Broadstone, 250 at Meadows at Platte Valley. All the rest have been approved. And again, we don't have a number to give you for Ensor.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
What was Platte Valley again?
250 is what this says. I'm getting a head nod, yes.
About 2,000.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Questions? Any other questions, council? No questions? So I think the question is, based on what we've heard this evening, we can move this to a study session and an exec session to further discuss it if we felt that's necessary, or we can decide not to. Jim?
Well, I'm going to make the motion that we do not consider a moratorium.
Need a second?
Second.
Do we have a second? Discussion. Phil? Discussion? Jim, do you want to?
Well, I think that we have spent 2 years trying to tell the public and potential developers that we're open for business, that we're no longer closed, that we don't have a fence built around us that says you can't develop here anymore. We don't want you. We don't need your business. We don't need your rooftops. Rooftops is what pays the services the city provides. Putting a moratorium on, even if it's for one day, is going to spread like wildfire through the development community, and a lot of the potential growth that this city might have that will produce the revenue that we need to survive on is going to go out the window. And I don't believe that this city can afford to do that. Therefore, if we reject a moratorium, even the subject of a moratorium at all, has some effect upon what will happen in the future, but rejecting it will help reinforce that message that, yes, we would like to invite you to come to Littleton.
I tried to listen very hard this evening as to the concerns that have been expressed by a lot of folks. And in lieu of a moratorium, I'd like you to have the city manager capture his comments that he shared with us as to the timing and what is actually in place. We've talked about impact fees, and I know that at least that was the most common theme for folks saying, hey, let's make sure we have folks paying for what benefit they're receiving, and that the burden doesn't fall to other folks. And a moratorium by itself, I don't think is going to move anything in a positive direction, rather than saying, let's get that, and if we can find a way to move up that schedule for consideration, I'd like to see that go. I'd also like to see what we can do on a proactive basis, either with our state legislatures or through CML, otherwise, in dealing with construction defects and the anomalies that that is causing in the market. It's what I've mentioned this before, and we've tried to do some things with the legislature this year, but it died on that front. So I'd like to see us certainly do along those directions, and I think we can be proactive in looking to protect all of our taxes that we do pay, and that we can look to try and move things to the right burden in the right place, absent a moratorium, which I just think scary would probably be the word I'd probably put on that as well.
Bruce.
Rick Snyder is the governor of Michigan, and he got quoted in a paper this morning I was reading. It said, "We can disagree without being disagreeable." He's a Republican, and he gets to deal with all the Democrats in Detroit, which is no small accomplishment. But his comment, I think, is apropos, because very much respect the fact that people have come in with a variety of opinions and will certainly disagree, but nobody's being disagreeable, which is very important, and likewise it's our responsibility to respect all the opinions that have been shared. Very much appreciate people bringing up or emphasizing the impact fee issue. I think City Manager Penny said it. I couldn't agree more. I think we need it. We need to get it in place. If there's any way to do it before July, great. If, the timelines are such that that's how it'll happen, we'll get to it. We'll get there as quick as we can. But that's a very good point that's been brought up by a lot of people, and very much appreciate that being put on the table for our councils and staff's consumption. I wanted to talk a little bit about just some of the other comments, broadly speaking, and offer a few thoughts in consideration thereof. A lot of the density, there's a sense, or at least I was taking a sense from the communication that density might be a council choice, when in part perhaps, but in another sense not necessarily. So, for example, the way the zoning works, and I'm looking at Mr. Watson's, I don't know if he's not here, his list of apartment construction inventory. So we haven't seen anything, at least I haven't seen anything on the Pinnacle project at Mountain Gate. So can't comment on that. Can't comment on Broadstone because it hasn't come through the process yet either. The Alta Aspen Grove project was built in accordance with zoning that had been approved for that site back in 2007. And that project technically wasn't an over rezone that came to council anytime during our tenure up here. It was built in accordance with the zoning, and therefore you can argue that the zoning back in 07 was flawed. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but that was a decision that was made back then by a different council, and they did not come to us for approval. They certainly had to go through the process with staff, but essentially what they built was allowed by the zoning that was on that piece of property, and therefore that's not an overt decision on council's part. County Line Road, Littleton Commons, yep, we went through that process. the communication was that the commercial attributes of that piece of property were untenable, and I didn't hear anything in the conversations or the deliberations or the citizen input that suggested that maintaining the commercial zoning on that particular parcel was likely to cause commercial to be developed there when it hadn't been developed on that parcel for 20 plus years. So we tried to consider the pros and cons. Now, the other side of that is the west side, which is also presently zoned commercial, and is, as it stands today, that the expectation there is that it would get zoned commercial because nobody's asked to do anything else. Nevada Place was residential. It was never commercial in the first place. We've been around the block on Nevada. I absolutely understand a lot of the comments. It was a 4-3 vote. There was obviously a lot of citizen input on that, and there was a lot of pros and cons and a slight lean based on a 4-3 vote to go the direction that it was done. South Metro housing is, to my knowledge, not all that dense. I'm trying to remember exactly what was going on. They may be putting some multifamily in because they've got a lot of dispersed housing throughout the community, but again, I would assume that they would be bound by whatever R 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zoning would be in place on the residential parcels they're working on, and therefore, unless they come for a rezone for something else, they would be allowed as under their own property rights to do what was communicated at the front end is here's your zoning, here's a commitment to allow you to do what you need to do on your piece of property based on the zoning that's in place. Marathon's already been rezoned. NSER's the existing zoning as far as I'm aware, and to my knowledge, I think City Manager Penny said Marathon may come in for a rezone with respect to the commercial boundaries. But I hope some of that gives a flavor for the sense that council's not overtly beating a drum that says we need more and more and more density. The 3 projects we have approved, there was a comment about the supermajority. The 3 that have come in, Nevada was a 4-3, Littleton Commons, I believe, was a 7-0, and I don't recall any citizens really coming down and being all that unhappy about Littleton Commons. And Breckenridge, I think, was a 7-0 council vote on the rezone, and I generally recall not a lot of negative. I think there was 1 or 2 citizens who had concerns about smoke and this kind of thing, but for the most part, there was a lot of citizen input on those particular projects that were extremely supportive. So, again, the Nevada was contentious, and I don't want to go through and rehash all that given the time we're at. But the 2 apartment projects were specific land use decisions based on attributes of those projects and sites that we were asked to adjudicate in a quasi-judicial proceeding and make a decision on based on very well-established land use code and law and comp plans that are in place and so forth and so on, and downtown neighborhood plans, for example, on Nevada, which was an extensive process by the Planning Commission and ultimately with council, and a lot of the attributes of what's in those projects is absolutely reflective of the zoning and the plans that were in place that we relied upon to make the decisions we made. I think we talked about impact fees. I think Councilmember Beckman basically said, and totally agree, I mean, we can't be raising taxes without voter approval anyway. And the last thing I'm going to say is just, we do try to certainly have in the past asked developers to pay for infrastructure. So, for example, the Alexon project on Rio Grande, if memory serves, they did pay for all the curb, gutter, and street improvements on Rio Grande that significantly upgraded that particular thoroughfare. You may or may not like the apartment complex, and I've heard comments as well, but the issues are that, and I hope, my sense or my hope and desire is that the dialogue we're having, that there's some sharing of additional information that people will take at face value and at least try to appreciate the fact that we definitely hear you. We're trying to do what we can to balance out all the voices based on all of the information we have that's been developed over years and years and years, and try to apply a lot of these concepts where we've got the opportunity to do it when the opportunity arises. And we are seeing opportunities arise now because capital is flowing. And to a certain extent, it is a little bit, I refer to it as the pig through the python, because, 3-4 years ago, there were no projects due to the recession, and we're now getting those projects, but I think we're well able to continue to balance and multitask these issues point forward. So for all those reasons, I'm going to vote in favor of Jim's motion.
Jerry.
I like to think of myself as being brief.
Excellent. Somebody needs to be.
Are you done?
Almost. Okay. Almost. I want to drag it out a little bit. I want to rehash history here. I just don't think that kind of stuff's necessary. I really don't. The bottom point for me here is that there are some valid reasons why they came forward with that moratorium that we do need to address. Absolutely, we need to address ASAP. ASAP. I think if we were to even consider a moratorium at this point, it's such a negative thing for the city of Littleton right now that I'm not willing to want to go that way. We've worked hard to get to where we are today, and I want to keep the ball rolling. We do need to make good decisions when it comes to developments and rezoning, all that other good stuff. We do need to address the issues that were brought forward tonight, that's for sure. Thank you. And good night.
Bruce.
I think a bucket of cold water has been thrown on certainly some of us on these issues. It is very important for council to listen to what's going on in the neighborhoods, how citizens feel, and what their concerns are. And tonight was a great example of that. As I listened, I wrote down little stars and underlined different things, but what they were community values. And some community values were expressed tonight that council has to keep right at the forefront of these discussions. And I think we do, but maybe they're not, they're not out there where there's the confidence level that that's what we're considering when we're doing these. So I think we do need to pay attention, try a little harder on some of those things. I'm not comfortable with a moratorium. I think that is a level that is just not appropriate to the discussion. But I believe that all the issues that were brought forward are very important for us to consider, and I think that that's what I certainly feel I'm going to be doing.
Peggy?
Yeah, I'll go with the short, too. I agree big time with what Jerry said, and also Bruce. Second, council can consider all the kinds of issues already that people were concerned with, so that's why I'm hoping they will come and speak out when these things come before us. And third, I'd like us to consider an ordinance related to the supermajority. I know we can't do it with things in the pipeline, but so that we have the same kind of requirement that the state does, that we were exempted from because we're home rule city. So I would like us to consider adopting that locally. Right? So the rezoning, if the immediate neighbor's certain percentage or whatever.
Yeah, why don't we, can that move to another, we're not going to deal with that tonight.
No. I'm suggesting that staff look into it and bring that to us.
Anything else?
No.
Well, certainly I do appreciate the community's input this evening, not only the citizens' input regarding concerns on multifamily, but also the business community and the real estate community. I think that a moratorium, as the other council members have said, and as we heard a lot this evening, that is, I will not support a moratorium, and I think that all the good, hard work that we've done over the years and the economic development plan that we just approved, all of that just goes away the minute we put up a moratorium. We just shut the gates. And, we we need to continue to thrive, and we need to continue to be a community that is still, attractive. New people want to come. Everybody's able to live in a community where their needs are met and their services are provided. And Littleton does that. Littleton has a great depth of providing for needs for open space and shopping and activities. We have the best school system in the state, I think probably the world. There's a lot of great benefits and a lot of great features, and that's what we need to work on, and that's what we need to promote, and that's what we march forward with. And we also we may be missing an impact fee study, but we obviously see the need for it. We're encouraging it. We have staff that's working on it. We have a comp plan with the Planning Commission. I was very impressed last night. The Planning Commission is very, very committed to this plan. They are they defended it. And I think they're putting together a great plan. They've got plans for working on the corridor studies. We've got an economic development plan. Developers are going to come in and they're going to have ideas. They're going to have what they want to do. And guess what? We get to say yes, or we get to say no, or we get to say yes if you do this to it, or change that, or make it look this way. We're not sitting in a place where we have to take everything that's thrown at us. We don't have to do that. And we have a staff, and I believe that we have a council who are very thoughtful. And we know we've spent months we're almost at a year and a half, almost 2 years together on what we want to look like, and there's our Littleton, planning our future together. And I think it includes everything we've all talked about, and that's what our marching orders are, and that's what we're going forward with, and working together to plan the community the right way. And a moratorium doesn't do that, but I think smart decisions and good planning does. Council, are you ready to vote? We do have a motion to not approve a moratorium. Bruce, did you have a comment?
A yes vote is to not approve the moratorium.
A yes does not move a moratorium forward.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries.
Okay. Jim.
Oh, Peggy brought up wanting to do an ordinance for a supermajority. I think we adopted a city charter to get away from state regulations and state rules, that we want to make it more conducive for what we want to do in Littleton, and I would not be supporting moving toward a supermajority. And frankly, I don't even want to see an ordinance come before us.
Okay.
I'm ready.
No other business? We're adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.